Chapter 222. This aura, this blood. Deep Sea Demonic Whale King! Not long after Chu Bei and the others left, a woman dressed in a blue gauze dress arrived above the battlefield. She looked down at the sea that was dyed red with blood and sniffed. After sensing the aura in the blood, her expression changed and her eyes were filled with shock. How can anyone hurt it? Even the great consecrator can only fight it to a draw. Could it be Lord Sea God? The woman in blue whispered softly. Her eyebrows were full of confusion. She was stunned for a moment. Then she came back to her senses. She immediately rushed in the direction she had come from. Her speed was at its peak. 10 nautical miles away from the sea god's island. Master, there are sharks! There are a lot of them! Dai Mubai suddenly exclaimed. Hundreds and thousands of white sharks quickly discovered the Dragon Abyss cruiser and surrounded it in a short while. These sharks are the guardian sharks of the sea god's island. Since we didn't enter the sea god's island through the normal passage, they thought we were intruders, Yu Xiaojiang said. Splash! The sea churned as the guardian sharks opened their bloody mouths and slowly approached the Dragon Abyss ship. However, just as the guardian sharks were about to attack the Dragon Abyss ship, a large white shark that was 20 meters long swam over. After the large white shark glanced at Chu Bei on the Dragon Abyss boat with fear, it made a strange sound from its mouth. In an instant, the hundreds and thousands of island guardian sharks around the Dragon Abyss boat quickly fled. I didn't expect you to appear at the right time. Chu Bei smiled as he looked at the great white demonic soul shark in front of him. Before the battle with the Deep Sea Demonic Whale King, he had already felt its existence. It could be said that the shark had seen his battle with the Deep Sea Demonic Whale King from beginning to end. The sea god really exists. I hope you don't mess around on the sea god's island. After speaking, the great white demon soul shark swung its tail and followed the Dragon Abyss boat from a distance. I didn't expect to see this island again after more than 10 years. Yu Xiaojiang sighed as he followed behind Chu Bei. As far as the eye could see, the entire sea god's island was covered in greenery. It was so large that one couldn't see the end of it. There were all kinds of plants growing on the island, many of which could not be found inland. Stepping on the gravel, a cool breeze blew against his face. The fragrance of various flowers was fresh, warm, and refreshing. Who are you? Before Tang San, Dai Mubai, and the others could enjoy the sea breeze of the divine sea island, a low shout was heard as over a dozen figures rushed out from the woods, blocking the path of Chu Bei and his disciples. These people all had different appearances, but they all had one thing in common. They were all wearing the same kind of tough armor. Each of them held a spear in their hands and looked at Chu Bei and his disciple with vigilance. Answer my question! Why did you invade the sea god's island? A tall man stepped forward and 3 soul rings lit up around his body. Previously, when they were patrolling, they heard the roar of the island guardian shark and immediately rushed over to investigate. What puzzled them was that this group of people wasn't killed by the island guardian shark. Instead, they easily stepped onto the sea god's island. Bring me to Sea Bai Saishi. Chu Bei's gaze swept across the patrolling soldiers as he spoke calmly. What a joke! Is the head consecrator someone you can see whenever you want? The tall man in the lead shouted. Then, he turned around and looked at the people behind him. These people trespassed on the sea god's island without permission. Tie them up and throw them into the sea prison. Deacon Lan will deal with them. Boss, there's no need for you to deal with these people. Dai Mubai, Tang San, and the others took a step forward as they looked at the soldiers of the sea god's island. There's no need to waste time on them. As soon as Chu Bei finished speaking, his eyes narrowed and the air froze. Ripples appeared in the air with him as the center. Wherever the ripples passed, the soldiers of the sea god's island fell to the ground with a loud bang. Their eyes were empty, and their bodies were stiff. Their mouths were wide open, as if they were frightened. Boss is amazing! Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing, and Ma Hongjun glanced at the motionless soldiers on the ground with astonishment in their eyes. They only knew that this was Chu Bei's masterpiece, but they didn't know how he did it. Tang San, Wang Fan, and Xiao Wu's expressions didn't change much. After all, they had already seen Chu Bei's technique when they were in the massacre city. Killing people without leaving a trace. What did you do to them? The tall man glanced at his unconscious companions and looked at Chu Bei in horror. He couldn't help but take a step back. Outsiders like you who trespassed on the sea god's island will be punished by the head consecrator. Forget it. Since you guys are stopping me from looking for her, then let her come find me. Chu Bei looked at the depths of the sea god's island and gathered a dazzling fireball in his palm. Chi. When the fireball was the size of a soccer ball, Chu Bei threw it out casually. The fireball broke through the air and appeared above the forest. Its size increased by several times. At the same time, Sea God's Island, Sea God's Palace. Lan Mei, what happened on the sea just now? That explosive energy made even me afraid. By sighs she held her scepter and frowned as she recalled the terrifying energy wave that came from the sea. Head consecrator, when I rushed over, the energy wave had already subsided. The blue-clothed woman called Lan Mei pursed her lips, took a deep breath and said, All I saw was a blood-stained sea. Through the aura, I can confirm that the blood belongs to the demon whale king. What? Someone injured the demon whale king? Bai Saishi's expression changed slightly when she heard Lan Mei's words. A trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. She guessed that the previous energy wave had something to do with the demon whale king. After all, as far as she knew, the only one in the entire sea that could mobilize such a terrifying amount of energy was the demon whale king. Previously, she thought that the demon whale king was just complaining because it couldn't become a god. Who would have thought that it was fighting and was defeated? Who could it be? Bai Saishi's frown deepened. She knew the strength of the demon whale king better than anyone else. Even with the support of the sea god's power, she could only fight it to a draw. After all, the demon whale king was only one step away from becoming a god. She couldn't think of anyone who could hurt the demon whale king. Could there be a more terrifying existence in the depths of the sea? Or could it be that the guy in the martial spirit palace on land had become a god? Head consecrator, how is Tangshan now? Lan Mei looked at Bai Saishi curiously. Hearing Lan Mei's question, Bai Saishi frowned and clenched her fists. I'll keep pleading with Lord Sea God until he lets him go. Boom! At this moment, the Sea God Palace shook violently with a loud noise. What happened? Bai Saishi and Lan Mei's figures appeared outside the palace in an instant. They looked toward the explosion and their pupils suddenly shrank. On the easternmost side of the island, above the forest closest to the coast, there was a huge mushroom cloud of flames. The terrifying energy dissipated and the forest below turned into nothingness. Even though they were a few miles away, some of the buildings around the Sea God Palace were still affected and debris flew everywhere. The scorching heat caused the temperature of the entire Sea God's island to rise by a few degrees. Feeling the energy fluctuation, Bai Saishi and Lan Mei's expressions changed at the same time. In the next moment, the two figures disappeared from their original positions. Directly below the explosion, the tall man collapsed on the ground and stared at Chu Bei with fear in his eyes. The forest behind him had completely disappeared under the destruction of the terrifying aftermath. There was only a charred open space without any birds or beasts. Swoosh! 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 Just as the tall man was at a loss, several long rainbows flew from all directions of the Sea God's island and landed behind him. Seeing the people behind him, the tall man immediately got up from the ground. The fear between his brows dissipated and his face was filled with joy. Head consecrator, these people trespassed on the Sea God's island. The tall man bowed deeply to Bai Saishi. However, before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by a wave of her hand and then respectfully retreated to the side. Who are you? Why have you come to the Sea God's island? Bai Saishi's gaze landed on Chu Bei. Although she looked very calm on the surface, there were many waves in her heart. Even with her strength, she couldn't detect any soul power fluctuations from him. Lan Mei and the deacons of the Sea God's island behind Bai Saishi were a little surprised as they looked at her. They knew their head consecrator too well. Although she treated the citizens of the sea god's island very well, she didn't tolerate outsiders who came to invade the island. Under normal circumstances, she would imprison anyone who came to invade the island and throw them into the sea prison. A few years ago, when the Martial Soul Hall came to invade the sea god's island, she killed 2 of their titled Dolua and scared the Martial Soul Hall so much that they didn't dare to invade the sea god's island again for many years. But now, their head consecrator was different from her usual self. She was actually calmly asking about the invaders' intentions. This wasn't her style at all. "Where's Tang Chen?" Chu Bei stood with his hands behind his back and looked straight at Bai Sai Shi. His expression didn't change at all. When they were still on the sea, Chu Bei found that the red dot that represented Tang Chen's position on the system map was a little strange. From the beginning to the end, the red dot didn't move at all. Now, when they came to the island, he made such a big commotion, but Tang Chen didn't appear. This was even more strange. "Who are you to Tang Chen? Don't tell me you're here for him?" Bai Sai Shi frowned. "Answer my question." Chu Bei's voice turned cold. "What if I don't say?" Seeing Chu Bei's attitude, Bai Sai Shi held the scepter in her hand and lightly shouted. After she shouted, Bai Sai Shi's body lit up with a light blue light. As her aura rose, the light blue gradually turned dark blue. When they thought about how the other party had severely injured the rank 85 Lan Mei, their expressions changed. Could the person in front of them be a rank 95 titled Doluo? Buzz buzz buzz, the great white demon soul shark let out a strange sound. After hearing the shark's words, Bai Sai Shi's expression changed from calm to confusion and then to astonishment. In the end, he stared at Chu Bei in disbelief. His eyes were filled with astonishment. "Were you the one fighting the deep-sea devil whale king? And you even defeated it?" Bai Sai Shi clenched her scepter with one hand and clenched her other hand into a fist. She took a deep breath and tried to maintain her composure. "What? He defeated the deep-sea overlord? Is it the deep-sea devil whale king that was blinded by the sea god? Impossible, how could he do that? Even the great consecrator could only fight it to a draw. Doesn't that mean he's stronger than the great consecrator? That's right, Little White must be seeing things. The great consecrator is a peak Doluo with half a foot in the god realm. If he's stronger than the great consecrator, then he's already a god." The deacons of the sea god's island shook their heads. They didn't believe that the man in front of them had the strength to defeat the deep-sea devil whale king. They all thought that Little White was bluffing. However, Lan Mei, who was recuperating from her injuries, trembled when she heard Bai Sai Shi's words. She had personally been at the scene. The deep-sea devil whale king was indeed seriously injured. Its blood even dyed the sea red. Combined with the timing of the other party's arrival on the island and Little White's witness, there was an 80 to 90% chance that this person was the one who seriously injured the deep-sea devil whale king. Lan Mei felt an inexplicable sense of fear when she thought that the intruder was stronger than the deep-sea devil whale king and Bai Sai Shi. If this person really came with ill intentions, the sea god's island would be in danger if the sea god didn't appear. In the end, Lan Mei simply gave up on healing and returned to Bai Sai Shi's side. She stared at Chu Bei's every move with vigilance. Chu Bei didn't respond to Bai Sai Shi's question about the deep-sea devil whale king. Instead, he repeated his initial words. "I'll say it one last time. Take me to see Tang Chen." Facing Chu Bei's increasingly cold in the forest gaze, Bai Sai Shi fell into hesitation this time. "Follow me." After a long while, Bai Sai Shi said, "It would be best if you can really take Tang Chen away." After speaking, Bai Sai Shi held the scepter in her hand and turned into a rainbow as she rushed towards the sea god's palace. "Who is this Tang Chen he's talking about? You're too ignorant and ill-informed. He's one of the 2 peak Doluo on the mainland." "What? So it's him? Then why is he on my sea god's island again?" "That Tang Chen has an indescribable relationship with the head consecrator. However, he seems to have come this time to set up a shop on my sea god's island. However, his actions seemed to have angered the sea god and he was imprisoned by the sea god. In that case, the head consecrator really brought that person to find Tang Chen? Even the head consecrator doesn't have the confidence to fight that person? Seeing Bai Saishi's figure disappear into the distance, the deacons were stunned. When they looked at Chu Bei again, it was as if they had been struck by lightning. They couldn't recover from their shock for a long time. After a long time, one by one, they rushed towards the Sea God's Palace. Sea God's Island, Sea God's Palace Plaza. Hundreds and thousands of Sea Soul Masters gathered around the Sea God's arena. All of them looked nervously at Bai Saishi. Of course, other than Bai Saishi, Chu Bei's group also became the focus of the crowd. Boss, great-grandfather is there. He seems to be trapped. Tang San pointed at an azure ball of light above the Sea God's arena. There was a figure floating inside the ball of light. His eyes were tightly shut and he didn't move at all. It was as if he had fallen into a deep sleep. Looking at him, this figure was Tang Chen. Don't worry, he's fine. He's just been temporarily imprisoned by the Sea God. Bai Saishi looked at Tang San, then looked at Tang Chen who was inside the azure ball of light. Chi. But just as Bai Saishi finished speaking, the temperature in the Sea God's Palace Plaza suddenly rose. Chu Bei's palm was ablaze with a magnificent flame, which transformed into a huge fire palm. Amidst the sizzling sound, under countless shocked gazes, the huge fire palm directly grabbed at the azure ball of light. Bang! There was an earth-shattering sound. The azure ball of light was shattered. Almost at the same time, the sleeping Tang Chen opened his eyes. Then, he was carried to the plaza by the huge flaming palm. Boss, you're here? Seeing Chu Bei, Tang Chen stepped forward and cupped his fists. There was a look of shame on his face. I came to the Sea God's Island before you and told Bai Saishi about the All Heavens shop. Bai Saishi couldn't make a decision, so she woke up the Sea God Poseidon. But after Poseidon experienced the goods in the shop, he felt that it would affect his people's faith in him. Not only that, he wanted me to tell him where the All Heavens shop came from. I didn't respond and was imprisoned by him. So, the things you arranged for me. Without waiting for Tang Chen to finish, Chu Bei waved his hand and interrupted. Since I'm here, leave the rest to me. He broke the ball of light that the Sea God used to trap Tang Chen. He's going against the Sea God. Great Consecrator, hurry up and invite the Sea God. Seeing what Chu Bei did, the group of Sea Spirit Masters spoke out one after another, their faces filled with anger. This wasn't what I wanted. Bai Saishi looked at Tang Chen apologetically, then her expression suddenly became serious. Then, a holy aura emanated from her body. In an instant, a deep blue light came out of her body and wrapped around Bai Saishi. Her body slowly floated in the air. Under everyone's gaze, Bai Saishi spun around in the air in a rhythmic pattern. The blue light around her body swept out. As the scepter in her hand danced, a huge whirlpool appeared in the Sea God arena. On the surface, the whirlpool looked like a tornado, but it was definitely not the power of the wind. This was because it contained water-type energy fluctuations. Sea God, please allow your people to wake you up. Bai Saishi began to chant a strange incantation, and 9 soul rings, black, 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 and red, lit up. At the same time, a majestic wave of soul power rippled out with her body as the center. So strong! Daimubai's eyes locked onto Bai Saishi. He could feel the boundless soul power in her body and couldn't help but gulp. Then, he looked at Tang Chen and his boss. There was an indescribable feeling in his eyes. As a prince of the Star Luo Empire, he had seen countless strong people since he was young. There was no lack of titled Doluo. However, ever since he became his boss's representative, he realized that even a rank 94 titled Doluo was nothing compared to the powerful beings he had met before. In just 2 short days he had come into close contact with Pope Bibi Dong, the king of slaughter Tang Chen, the 990,000-year-old deep-sea demon whale king, and the ultimate Doluo Bai Saishi in front of him. He could even see the ruler of the sea, the legendary sea god. Not only Daimubei, but Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing, and the others were also in a daze. Under their boss's lead, they had experienced too many big scenes. They had seen existences that others might not see in their entire lives. They were still children. As Bai Saishi finished her incantation, the originally pitch-black sea god's palace seemed to be lit up by the golden light. Whether it was the walls or the roof, they were all baptized by a layer of golden demonic patterns. The originally simple and unadorned hall was now completely dyed in gold. Boom! Accompanied by a loud sound, an unprecedented holy aura burst out from the whirlpool in front of Bai Saishi. It turned into a huge pillar of light that shot into the sky. Suddenly, all the sea soul masters in the arena roared into the sky. Their expressions were first painful, then comfortable. Lord Sea God, this is Lord Sea God's divine power! Feeling the warm flow in their bodies, the sea soul masters exclaimed excitedly. They looked at the pillar of light in the whirlpool with pious eyes. Unknowingly, a golden trident imprint appeared between the eyebrows of all the sea soul masters, including Bai Saishi. It released a holy aura. Is this the aura of the sea god? It feels like I'm swimming in the sea. Feeling the aura of the blue light surrounding her body, Xiaowu had a satisfied expression on her face. Then, she curiously looked at Chu Bei and asked, Boss, aren't you also a god? Can you let us feel your divine power? Chu Bei patted Xiaowu's head and smiled without saying anything. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the sea god's arena trembled violently. Then, the sea god's palace also shook. In the end, the entire sea god's island shook. This violent shaking lasted for a full 10 seconds before it stopped. On the sea god's arena, Bai Saishi's body had turned completely golden. She was kneeling in the air toward the huge pillar of light. Her face was filled with piousness, as if she was waiting for something. Bai Saishi, what have you encountered that you need to wake me up? If you want to plead for Tangqin, you can forget about it. Suddenly, a deep, vigorous, and dignified voice floated across the entire sea god's island. Although the source of the voice could not be found, it filled every corner of the sea god's island, including the sea, and shook everyone's heart. Before the dignified voice disappeared, a huge golden figure slowly appeared in the pillar of light above the sea god's arena. The figure was illusory, and it was 5 times the height of Bai Saishi. One could vaguely see that it was a human wearing golden armor. The brilliant golden light was filled with boundless majesty. His entire body was covered in golden armor, but his face was completely illusory and could not be seen clearly. Compared to the golden armor, the golden trident in his hand was even more dazzling. The trident was quietly held in the hands of the illusory figure, but it gave people the feeling that it could pierce the heavens and split the earth. Honorable Lord Sea God, we are all your people. Please accept our offerings. Below the sea god's arena, hundreds and thousands of sea spirit masters knelt on the ground at almost the same time. They looked up at the golden figure in the pillar of light, their devout eyes burning with passion. The same situation occurred in every part of the sea god's island. The inhabitants of the island walked out of their rooms without hesitation. They knelt in the direction of the sea god's palace and bowed to the golden figure. The might of the sea god could be seen from 1,000 miles away. In the sea, all living things could feel the aura of the golden figure. The moment the figure appeared, the turbulent sea suddenly became quiet and all living things in the sea stopped moving. The sea spirit beasts subconsciously turned in the direction of the sea god's island, trembling as they bowed respectfully. Chapter 224. Even the 990,000-year deep-sea devil whale king, which was on the verge of transforming into a dragon, opened its single eye. Unlike the other sea spirit beasts, the deep-sea demon whale king's eyes were filled with unwillingness and a hint of joy. Did the two of you meet each other? It's best if both of you are severely injured in a battle between two gods. 2 figures appeared in the deep-sea demon whale king's mind. One was the person who had blinded its eye 10,000 years ago, and the other was the man who had almost cut its body in half. Of course, if it had to choose one, it would still prefer the latter. After all, the latter had promised to help it become a god. Is this the sea god? He's not as approachable as Boss at all. Below the sea god's platform, Ning Rongrong stared at the figure in the pillar of light and couldn't help but mutter. As a god, the sea god exuded a supreme majesty that made people subconsciously want to worship him. He gave people a feeling that he was out of reach and could not be offended. Her boss, on the other hand, was very amiable and didn't feel oppressed at all. Hearing Ning Rongrong's mutter, Dai Mubai, Oscar, Xiao Wu, and the others looked at each other, obviously agreeing with her. Boss, what are those? Looking at the small golden lights around Poseidon, Tang San tilted his head and asked Chu Bei curiously. These lights came from all corners of the sea god's island, but most of them came from the ocean. These golden lights entered the pillar of light, and the figure holding the trident became more and more solid. Chu Bei looked at Tang San and said calmly, "This is the power of faith. It comes from the faith of all creatures in the ocean to the sea god. Lord Sea God, this time I didn't wake you up to plead for Tangqin." Bai Saishi bowed respectfully to Poseidon and pointed in Chu Bei's direction. You actually escaped. When Poseidon looked in the direction of Chu Bei and the others, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes when he saw Tangqin. The rolling thunder carried supreme power. Lord Sea God, he was the one who rescued Tangqin from your sea prison. Bai Saishi knelt in front of Poseidon, pointed at Chu Bei, and said, "He also defeated the demon whale king. I had no choice but to wake you up." Oh? Hearing Bai Saishi's words, the sea goddess' tone softened. Two beams of light shot out from her golden eyes and fixed on Chu Bei as if she was sizing him up. Dai Mubai, Oscar, and the others instinctively stepped back and hid behind Chu Bei when they felt the terrifying aura from Poseidon's body. Facing the sea god's gaze, Chu Bei clasped his hands behind his back, and his eyes flashed with cold in the forest. "Poseidon, the representative of my shop, is here to negotiate with you. Even if we can't reach an agreement, you can't treat him like this. This person, he actually dares to call out Lord Sea God's name. Crazy, this person is really crazy. He doesn't even respect Lord Sea God?" Chu Bei's light voice drifted through the air, scaring the group of oceanic soul masters so much that they broke out in cold sweat. Especially the three words that he deliberately emphasized, which were taboo in their daily lives. Poseidon, haha, I can't remember how long it has been since someone called me that. The sea goddess suddenly laughed heartily. Her deep laughter spread out from the sea goddess temple, echoing over the entire sea. "So, you are the true owner of the All Heavens shop? That's good, it saves me the trouble of looking for you." Under everyone's confused gaze, the sea goddess suddenly took a step forward. With this step, everything around her turned into a brilliant gold. Even the plants that were a few kilometers away looked like they were made of gold. "What is your name in the god realm?" The sea goddess stared at Chu Bei, and her tone suddenly became serious. "Sure enough, you are a god." Hearing the sea goddess's words, Bai Saishi glanced at Chu Bei fearfully. Her guess was right. Only a god could seriously injure the deep-sea demon whale king that was close to 1,000,000 years old. What is a god? Do you think that the so-called god you speak of is the end of the road of cultivation? The world is vast, and not limited to this Dolua continent, or the god realm you speak of. As his indifferent voice fell, a fist-sized peach appeared in Chu Bei's palm. It was especially plump. Immortal energy lingered around the peach, and the rich fruit fragrance was refreshing. This was a peach king from the Queen Mother's peach garden, which he had used his rank 11 low-grade commodity privilege to purchase from the journey to the West Plain. It had grown for 20,000 years. After Chu Bei swallowed the peach in 2 mouthfuls, his aura suddenly changed. His entire person seemed to become ethereal and difficult to capture. Almost at the same time, with Chu Bei as the center, the ground began to tremble. The neat rows of simple bluestone bricks on the ground, the sea god's platform, and even the entire sea god's palace were shrouded in a dense fog. After the group of sea soul masters stabilized themselves, they looked at the changes around them in horror. This was no longer the sea god's island they were familiar with. It was more like a fairyland filled with immortal fog. Not only that, but under countless horrified gazes, Chu Bei's body size increased proportionally until it was about the same size as the sea god Poseidon. At the same time, his entire body released a brilliant purple light. Far in the sky, two figures stood facing each other. The vast void seemed to be divided into two halves by gold and purple. A bigger world outside the god realm? Poseidon looked at Chu Bei, who was shrouded in a dense fog, and a trace of undetectable surprise flashed in his golden eyes. You think that you are already standing at the peak of the road of cultivation. How could you know that there is a bigger world outside? Chu Bei looked at Poseidon calmly. He did not have the slightest bit of respect for the sea god, who was revered by tens of thousands of people. Poseidon's voice trailed off, and a trace of confusion appeared in his golden eyes. At his level, he had wondered many times if he could make another breakthrough in his realm. But after ascending to the god realm, he had already become one of the most powerful gods. There was no one more powerful than him. As time passed, this thought gradually dissipated. In his opinion, his realm was already at the peak. Who would have thought that many years later, a god who claimed to be from a bigger world would ask him this question that had once puzzled him? Before Poseidon could speak, Chu Bei asked with a smile, "Do you feel the fluctuations of soul power from my body? I seem to believe what you said a little." After a long silence, Poseidon retracted the golden light that was projected on Chu Bei's body. Indeed, from the beginning he had sensed that this person was different from himself. Although he had already become a god at rank 100, even if his soul power had been sublimated into divine power, he could still occasionally feel the energy fluctuations related to soul power. After all, this was the natural law of the Doloa continent. Even if you became a god, you still had the aura of the Doloa continent. However, although this person in front of him had an aura that was not weaker than his, the huge amount of energy contained in his body did not have any aura of soul power. It was very strange. Perhaps this person was not from the Doloa continent. This was the only explanation that made sense. Little San, why can't I understand the conversation between the boss and the sea god? What do you mean by a god who has jumped out of the Doloa continent? Oscar tilted his head and looked at Tang San beside him, a little confused. It is a little profound. Perhaps only those who have reached their realm can understand. Tang San naturally knew that there were other planes outside the Doloa continent. After all, he had transmigrated from another plane. As for Daim Mubai, Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqin, and the others, including Yu Xiaojing, they were all confused. You are also here to set up the All-Heavens shop on the Sea God's Island? Poseidon looked at Chu Bei and asked calmly. Yes. Chu Bei nodded and replied softly. Hearing this, Poseidon held his golden trident and flew into the sky. If you can defeat me, I will agree to let you set up the All-Heavens shop on the Sea God's Island. Furthermore, I will give the people behind you the Sea God's test that is most suitable for them. When Poseidon's figure floated in the air, his vigorous voice reverberated in the air and rang in everyone's ears. Chu Bei was silent. He flew into the sky and directly showed his attitude with his actions. Is the boss really going to fight the sea god? Little San, who do you think will win? Although the boss is a god, the sea god has also become a god. As for who is stronger, I don't know. In my opinion, the boss is definitely stronger. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm. But the battlefield here is the sea. His opponent is the sea god. He can use the power of the sea. The geographical location is not good for the boss. Xiao Wu, Tang San, Ning Rongrong, and the others looked directly at the sky above the sea god's island. There, two tall figures were facing each other from a few meters away. Perhaps one of them was considering the residents of the sea god's island, and the other was considering the representatives. Although the two figures were releasing monstrous auras, their terrifying auras avoided the sea god's island. Please don't let it be a battle to the death. Bai Saishi muttered softly as she looked up at the sky. Although the two gods' auras avoided the sea god's island, she could still feel the faintly discernible terrifying auras. No matter which side it was, she couldn't muster up the courage to resist. At this moment, she completely understood the difference between a peak Doloa and a true god. Although it seemed like there was only a thin line between them, It was actually the difference between heaven and earth. On the east coast of the sea god's island, a group of demon soul great white sharks trembled as they gathered together. The 100,000-year great white shark stood at the forefront of the group, its head above the sea surface as it fearfully looked at the two figures above the sea god's island. At the bottom of the sea, 500 nautical miles away from the sea god's island, the deep-sea demon whale king shot out a beam of blue light from its single eye. As expected, they are fighting. When both of you perish together, I will devour your remaining divine power and become a true dragon. The deep-sea demon whale king let out a deafening roar that was filled with excitement and anticipation. Chapter 225. In the boundless sea, the demon whale king looked at the sky above the sea god's island. He had already made up his mind. If Chu Bei and Poseidon perished together, he would use the remaining energy in their bodies to break through. If the person who broke his bones didn't die, he would complete the task given to him. 50 nautical miles away from the sea god's island, a group of people stood on the deck of a huge ship and stared at the sky above the sea god's island in astonishment. They were dressed in black robes with the word soul emblazoned on the back. Deacon, is this terrifying energy the chief consecrator of the island, Bai Saishi? A man looked at the tall and skinny old man beside him and asked. Because they were too far away, he could only see two balls of light facing each other even if he circulated all his soul energy. Who else could it be other than her? But who is the person fighting against her? The tall and skinny old man frowned and looked at the man beside him. Send a message back. Inform the Pope and the chief consecrator of the situation here. Sea God's Island, high in the sky. This trident is a divine artifact that I fused with the energy of the outside world when I ascended to godhood. It is called the Sea God's Trident and weighs 108,000 pounds. With this trident, I created the 13 golden halberds and am invincible in the sea. On the battlefield, Poseidon held the Neptune's trident in his right hand and waved it in Chu Bei's direction. His voice was full of majesty. It was like a duel between experts, but it also seemed like he was showing off his magic. There are thousands of cultivation methods in the world. I am different from you. I have never fused with the energy of the outside world. That is why I have never had the experience of turning into an energy armor like you. Chu Bei waved his hand at Poseidon, indicating that he should stop fiddling with the sea god's trident. You don't have a divine artifact? Poseidon frowned. I don't need one. Chu Bei coughed dryly and said, Every part of my body has the power of a divine artifact. As his indifferent voice fell, Chu Bei's figure began to change. First, it turned into a broad blade that was releasing a strange blue light. Then, it turned into a sharp purple long sword. Then, it turned into a long spear that was flashing with silver light. Finally, it turned into a pitch-black huge stick. Spear, halberd, staff, battle-axe, trident, drum, hook, lance, ring, saber, sword, crutch, axe, whip, mace, hammer, staff, pestle. Chu Bei used all 18 types of weapons. In the end, it transformed into a golden trident that looked exactly like the one in Poseidon's hand. Enough! Poseidon took a deep breath. He could not help but let out a roar. He had been the sea god for thousands of years, and his state of mind had never wavered. But at this moment, when he faced Chu Bei, waves appeared in his heart. Hearing Poseidon's angry roar, Chu Bei transformed back into his human form and stood quietly in the void, his robe fluttering in the wind. The first move of the 13 golden halberds, unpredictable storm. Poseidon, who had calmed down again, held the sea god's trident in his hand and took a step forward. The blade of the trident brought out dazzling golden halos. Each of the halos looked disorderly, but they seemed to have grown eyes and were moving towards Chu Bei with a purpose. The golden halos seemed to have the ability to seal the void. Wherever they passed, the void collapsed, but there was no sound. It was dead silent. Looking at the incoming golden halos, Chu Bei did not dodge. Instead, he smiled faintly. Tang Qin, you are already an ultimate Doluo. Watch my battle with him clearly. Perhaps it will be helpful to you. The move he is using now is the first move of the 13 golden halberds, called Unpredictable Storm. It is both offensive and defensive. It is also the strongest restrictive skill of the 13 golden halberds. Once it hits the opponent, even if they are gods, they will not be able to move for 8 seconds. Suddenly, Chu Bei's voice pierced through the void and echoed clearly in the ears of everyone on the Sea God's Island. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Tang Chen's expression was extremely serious. His gaze was focused on the Sea God's trident in Poseidon's hand. I didn't expect you to know so much about my 13 golden halberds. You came prepared. Poseidon's eyes flashed with surprise. When he saw Chu Bei let his unpredictable storm hit him, he frowned. Since you know that this is a restrictive skill, why are you not doing anything? Even if you are a god, 8 seconds is enough to severely injure you. As he shouted coldly, Poseidon moved again. As Poseidon danced, the golden halberd turned into countless golden lights. The halberd shadows filled the sky like golden clouds. It was dazzling. Almost in an instant, the halberd shadows overlapped and attacked Chu Bei from different directions with unparalleled power. The aura was like a rainbow. It was as if there was no one before and no one after. This is the second move of the 13 golden halberds, 1,000 years of space. It is not only an area of effect skill, but it can also be used as a single attack. Just like before, as soon as Poseidon attacked, Chu Bei's voice rang in everyone's ears again. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Bei opened his hands, and a blazing, colorful fire dragon shot out from his palms. The fire dragon tore through the void and collided with the halberd shadows. Perhaps it was due to the collapse of the void, or perhaps Chu Bei and Poseidon had deliberately suppressed the energy of the explosion. When the colorful fire dragon and the halberd collided, there was no earth-shattering explosion. Instead, there was only a continuous intertwining of light that eventually turned into nothingness. At first glance, the two terrifying forces seemed to cancel each other out. You were hit by my unpredictable storm. How can you still move? How did you do it? Bai Saishi's eyes were fixed on Chu Bei. Her eyes were filled with shock. It was not difficult to hear the shock in her voice. Chu Bei smiled faintly and raised an eyebrow at Bai Saishi. He did not answer her question. You've successfully angered me. Sensing Chu Bei's provocative expression, Bai Saishi could not help but twitch the corner of her mouth. Poseidon had taken the time to explain his moves to the people below while fighting with him. He did not take him seriously at all. After becoming a god for many years, he finally experienced the feeling of anger again. Due to the fluctuation of his emotions, his unrestrained aura almost seeped into the Sea God's Island. As an area of effect skill, 1,000 years of space is far from enough to deal with me. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest, his expression calm. Perhaps if Poseidon's real body was here, he would have to fight seriously. However, the Poseidon in front of him was only a clone left behind when he entered the divine realm. There was nothing to be afraid of. The third move, never return! Poseidon's cold voice rang out. The sea within 100-mile radius instantly boiled, and layers of 1,000-meter waves rose up. Tens of millions of streams of blue light swept out from the sea below and disappeared into the golden trident. Almost at the same time, Poseidon threw the golden and blue trident at Chu Bei. This is an attack that uses the power of the sea. It is one of the most powerful of the 13 moves. After Chu Bei's voice rang out in everyone's ears, he looked at Poseidon and shook his head. Compared to 1,000 years of space, Never Return's power is many times stronger. However, it is still not enough to deal with me. After saying that, Chu Bei's eyes narrowed, and layers of ripples spread out from his body. Just as the trident, which contained the power of the sea, pierced through the void and was about to pierce him, 2 giant purple palms appeared out of thin air. The giant purple palm closed and instantly clamped down on the trident that carried a monstrous might. The golden and blue radiance on the trident was like a primordial beast that wanted to devour its prey. However, the giant purple palm was like a cage. No matter how powerful the trident was, it couldn't advance even a little bit. In the void, the giant purple palms held the trident and spun it. When the trident was aimed at Poseidon, it was suddenly thrown back. I really want to use my original body to fight with you. Poseidon grabbed the golden trident that was thrown back and fixed his eyes on Chubei. He could not help but sigh. He is actually so powerful? Even the sea god is here, and he still can't take him down? On the sea god arena, Lan Mei stood behind Bai Saishi and watched the battle in the sky for a long time. Her brows were furrowed in astonishment. From the beginning of the battle until now, the sea god has not gained the upper hand. Bai Saishi's expression was ugly. From the beginning, the sea god had been the one attacking, and the man was defending. Even so, the sea god's every attack was easily neutralized by the man. What was even more terrifying was that the man seemed to know the sea god's 13 golden halberds very well. However, the sea god knew nothing about the man. An unknown enemy was the scariest. Brother Mubai, you are the strongest among us. Tell me, how is the battle between Boss and the sea god going? Ning Rongrong, Wang Fan, and the rest looked at Dai Mubai. As they were not strong enough, they could only see the beautiful lights intertwining in the sky. They could not see the specific battle situation clearly. Currently, Boss has the upper hand. Dai Mubai thought for a moment and replied. Did you hear that? What did I say? So what if this is the sea god's battlefield? Boss is invincible! Ning Rongrong suddenly shouted excitedly. After hearing Dai Mubai's answer, Ma Hongjun, Zhu Zhuqing, and the rest were overjoyed. It was not difficult to see the admiration in their eyes. High in the sky, on the battlefield, Chubei looked at the conflicted Bai Saishi mockingly and said with a smile, Don't hesitate. The energy in your body is enough for you to perform the 13th style. The reason why you left this doppelganger behind is to find a successor. Don't worry, I have already found your successor, and he is among the people I brought here. Ridiculous! Do you think my successor is something you can casually say? Bai Saishi snorted coldly and then closed her golden eyes. She slowly pointed the sea god's trident at the sky. His face was a little serious, and the waves and clouds covering the sea god's divine armor seemed to be coming to life. Sea god's domain. As the 4 sonorous syllables fell, 8 blue wings sprouted from Poseidon's back. As the wings flapped, with his body as the center, water blue ripples instantly spread out. At this moment, Poseidon's slightly illusory body completely solidified. He looked exactly like a real person, especially his face, which was clearly displayed in front of Chubei. The blue ripples released from Poseidon's body seemed to have ignited the entire sea. Water blue energy rose from the surface of the sea, and the purest water element in the sea filled the void. In an instant, the originally empty void was covered by blue. Endless blue light filled the entire sky, and the enormous divine power of the sea god forcibly blocked the light of the sun. Is this the sea god's domain? It covers the entire sea. In the sea god's domain, no matter how powerful that person is, he won't be able to defeat the sea god. If the sea god hadn't gone to the godly realm, this battle wouldn't have lasted for so long. That person would have been defeated long ago. A group of deacons with cultivations above Sol Dolua looked up at the distant sky, which seemed to have been swallowed by the sea. Their faces were filled with excitement. However, just as the excitement of the sea god's domain rose, a layer of purple light appeared in the endless blue light. Unlike the transparent blue light, this purple light was turbid, and it seemed to be able to block one's vision. What was more terrifying was that the surface of the sea, which was boiling because of the sea god's power, was also filled with this turbid purple light. Within the purple light, a manor could be vaguely seen. There were hundreds and thousands of peach trees in the manor. Unlike ordinary peach trees, the peaches on these peach trees were filled with a dense and divine aura. Is this your domain? Also, is this your true form? Poseidon's mouth was slightly agape as he looked in front of him in shock. This was the first time he had lost his composure since he had become a god. Right now, Chubei was no longer in his human form. He was no longer in his 18 weapons form. Instead, he was a huge ripe purple-patterned peach of immortality. Just looking at it made him want to swallow it whole. This is just one of my techniques. Chu Bei looked coldly at Poseidon. He was cursing in his heart. How could his true form be the Peach King? After recovering from his shock, 10 golden soul rings lit up on Poseidon's body. As the trident danced, the boundless sea below started to boil. Boundless water elements surged towards Poseidon. At the same time, the sea god's 8 wings on his back were fully extended. The blue light that extended out covered the sky. In the next moment, the sea god's trident slowly overlapped with Poseidon's figure. Gradually, Poseidon and the sea god's trident could no longer be seen with the naked eye. All that could be seen was a ball of dazzling blue light that was filled with unparalleled power. As the abundant water elements gathered, the ball of blue light finally transformed into the shape of a trident. It stretched across the void, surrounded by lightning. 13th style, body and trident as one, stellar shift. As the majestic voice sounded, the sky above the sea darkened. All sorts of stars flickered. At this moment, the void stopped. Chapter 226. Poseidon and the Poseidon's trident merged into one, bringing with it the power to destroy the world as it pierced through the void towards Chu Bei. There's still some power left in this move. An ethereal voice that seemed to have come from beyond the heavens reverberated through the sky. The sound waves formed by the voice spread far and wide. Almost at the same time, the huge peach that Chu Bei had transformed into started to spin, and the void around it started to crumble. Amidst a terrifying buzzing sound, a huge black hole appeared in the sky that had been darkened by Poseidon's divine power. Inside the hole, 8 huge meteorites that seemed to have come from beyond the heavens and were wrapped in dense divine energy descended. They surrounded Chu Bei like stars surrounding the moon. The 8 meteorites released a demonic purple light that connected with each other. In an instant, the 8 misty meteorites became a ring-shaped hole without any gaps, and Chu Bei, who was in the form of a huge peach, was in the center, as if he was the commander of this huge object. Rumble! Amidst the crumbling sky, purple and blue stabilized the void and slowly clashed with each other. Amidst the dead silence, blue and purple intertwined. Even though there was no earth-shattering explosion, everyone on the sea god's island instinctively closed their eyes because of the dazzling light that was radiating from the collision. At the point of collision, the blue and purple light seemed to have been ignited. It spread in all directions from the sea god's island at a speed 10 million times faster than the speed of light. First, it was the boundless ocean. Then, it was Oceanic City, the Heaven Do Empire, the Star Luo Empire, the Great Star Do Forest. The entire sky above the Doluo continent was covered by the blue and purple light. At this moment, everyone on the continent stopped what they were doing and stared at the sky in shock and horror. What's going on? Why did the sky suddenly become like this? This is a natural phenomenon. There are no records of this in the ancient books. Is the legendary god about to descend? In my opinion, this should be the sign of a powerful individual from one of the great organizations becoming a god. Ordinary citizens gathered together and stared at the phenomenon in the sky as they speculated. As for the soul emperors and soul sages, they all looked at each other. They could feel that the blue and purple lights in the sky belonged to 2 different sides, each containing a different terrifying energy. Under the pressure of these 2 terrifying auras, the soul power in their bodies actually stopped flowing, and they couldn't even summon their martial souls successfully. In the depths of his heart, he felt an inexplicable urge to worship the sky. Headquarter of Martial Spirit Palace, Pope Palace. Is the source accurate? Did he really defeat that deep-sea overlord? Bibi Dong looked coldly at the black-robed man in front of him, his calm voice filled with majesty. Unlike before, the current Bibi Dong no longer had a holy aura around him. Instead, his entire body was wrapped in an ink-black aura, giving off a bloodthirsty and ruthless feeling. Your Holiness, the news is absolutely true. There were more than 100 sea spirit masters who witnessed the battle, and it was Boss Chu who saved them. The black-robed man looked at Bibi Dong with a face full of fear, and his expression became even more respectful. The news spread very quickly. I'm sure the royal families of the 2 empires, the 3 upper sects, and the 4 lower sects all know about it. He actually has the strength to kill that demonic whale king. It seems that I still underestimated him. Bibi Dong clenched the scepter in his hand tightly, his veins popping out. Bibi Dong's eyes were filled with unwillingness. As soon as he finished speaking, his body trembled violently. In the next moment, his figure flickered and appeared outside the Pope's palace in an instant. What's going on? Bibi Dong raised his head and looked at the sky that had turned bluish-purple. He frowned and his gaze fell on the old man beside him. These 2 auras. One of them contains the power of the sea. It's not Bai Saishi's aura, but it's more powerful than hers. I'm afraid it's the energy left behind by the sea god. Qian Daolu narrowed his eyes and looked dignified. He shook his head and said, As for the other aura, I don't know. That mysterious merchant went to the sea god's island. Could it be his? Bibi Dong took a deep breath and suppressed the throbbing in his heart. He looked at the elder beside him and said, Between you and him, who's stronger? Could the other aura really be his? Qian Dao looked in the direction of the sea god's island with a gloomy face. At least I'm sure that he defeated the demonic whale king. Based on this point alone, I'm afraid that his cultivation level is higher than mine. Perhaps he's already half a step into the divine realm. Then are you confident that you can defeat him? Bibi Dong continued to ask, his voice emotionless. With the help of the angel divine armor, I'm confident that I can defeat him. After saying that, 6 golden wings appeared on Qian Daoliu's back. His entire body released a holy aura. 100 Break Mountain. A rapid waterfall crashed down from the top of the mountain. It was magnificent. In the middle of the waterfall, a middle-aged man with yellow skin and bulging muscles stood on a mountain rock with half of his upper body exposed. He allowed the waterfall to crash down on him. In his hand, a hammer full of patterns was releasing a demonic black light. Sanner, you've met an incredible existence. With him around, I don't have to worry about your safety. Tang Hao stopped waving the clear sky hammer in his hand and looked at the blue and purple sky with a gratified expression. Not long ago, when he learned that Chu Bei had defeated the demonic whale king, he was truly shocked. Now, when he felt the terrifying aura coming from the sea god's island, he was even more shocked. Sea god's island, sea god's palace. As the closest group of people to the epicenter of the collision, the sea soul masters on the island were still unable to look at the sky. Even a peak Doluo like Bai Saishi could only rely on her powerful divine sense to sense the situation above. Head Consecrator, how's the battle between the sea god and that person? Quickly tell us. Our cultivation levels are not high enough, so we can't sense the battle between the sea god and other existences. Around the sea god arena, a group of sea soul masters looked at Bai Saishi anxiously. Tang San, Yu Xiaojing, and the rest also surrounded her. Bai Saishi's gaze swept across everyone. She frowned and shook her head. Disappeared. The sea god and that person both disappeared from the battlefield. Disappeared? What does that mean? Don't tell me the sea god and that person. Hearing Bai Saishi's words, the expressions of the sea soul masters changed. However, just as their thoughts were running wild, there was an explosion in the distant sky. The blue and purple colors that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. In an instant, the sky became clear again. The rolling waves of the sea also quieted down. On the sea god's island, the buildings, bricks, and trees that had turned into metal earlier also returned to their original state. Everything returned to normal. Where did Boss go? Ning Rongrong, Xiao Wu, Xu Xuqin, and the rest looked around, searching for Chu Bei's figure. As for Bai Saishi and the Sea Soul Masters, they were trying their best to find Poseidon. Just as everyone was anxious and uneasy, a layer of ripples appeared in the sky above the sea god's palace. From the ripples, 2 figures stepped out. Poseidon was just like before. The figure in the golden armor was illusory, and no one could see his face clearly. Chu Bei's hands were behind his back. There was a faint smile on his face. After looking in the direction of Tang San and the rest, he slowly descended onto the arena. Lord Sea God! All the Sea Soul Masters, including Bai Saishi, knelt down piously in front of Poseidon. As for Tang San, Xiao Wu, and the rest, they swarmed around Chu Bei. They could not wait to ask about the results of the battle. Chu Bei smiled as he looked at his disciples. He did not immediately answer their questions. Instead, he looked at Poseidon. You are all children of the sea. Don't kneel. Get up. In the sky, Poseidon waved the golden trident in his hand. A ray of blue light lifted up the kneeling Sea Soul Masters. Lord Sea God, you. Bai Saishi looked at Poseidon respectfully. She seemed to be in a dilemma. It seemed like she wanted to ask something, but because of fear, she did not finish her sentence. You don't have to be so formal. Poseidon laughed heartily. He looked at the Sea Soul Masters and said, I'm sure all of you are curious about the results of this battle? Hearing this, all of the Sea Soul Masters raised their heads. Although no one said anything, their eyes were filled with anticipation. I've lost. These 3 syllables came out of Poseidon's mouth, and he spoke without hesitation. That's great. I knew that the boss had won. The boss is invincible. The boss is the best. Even the sea god is no match for the boss. As soon as Poseidon finished speaking, the Sea Soul Masters' expressions changed. Before they could react, Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and the rest, who were also waiting for the answer, shouted excitedly. They danced around Chu Bei. These disciples of yours are really pure. Looking at the happy kids, Poseidon looked at Chu Bei and could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. There were so many of his people here. Even if their boss had won the battle, they should at least consider his reputation. They should at least wait until there was no one around to cheer. Don't mind them. They are still children. Noticing the twitching corner of Poseidon's eyes, Chu Bei smiled and gestured for Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and the rest to keep a low profile. He then turned around to look at the Sea Soul Masters, including Bai Saishi and the deacons. Their eyes were wide open like copper bells, as if they had been electrocuted. Their minds were in a half-dazed state. They could not believe what they had just heard. They would rather believe that they were hallucinating than believe that the sea god had lost to that person. The sea god was the ruler of the sea. They believed in him. How could he lose? No matter how strong you are, there will always be someone stronger. Even if it's me, I will still encounter opponents and lose. Poseidon's voice echoed in everyone's ears. Ever since I became a god at level 100, I have never been defeated. But today, I am defeated, but I am not disappointed. Instead, it has aroused my desire to fight. At this point, Poseidon looked at Chu Bei with a determined gaze. One day, I will go one step further and verify what you said. Is there a wider world beyond the realm of gods? If you really have a breakthrough, the wider world will not disappoint you. With a smile, Chu Bei tilted his head and looked at Tang Qin. Find a good place and open up the All-Heavens Chamber of Commerce. Tang Qin was stunned. Then, he looked at Poseidon. Since you have lost this battle, I will not stop you. Poseidon glanced at Tang Qin. Hearing this, Tang Qin flew to a place not far away. When he appeared at the entrance of the sea god's temple, the proxy ring on his middle finger shone brightly. Boom! There was a loud noise. A huge building no smaller than the sea god's temple appeared out of thin air. An exquisite plaque hung above the grand entrance. The words, All Heaven's Shop Branch, were particularly eye-catching on the plaque. What is that? Chapter 227. When they entered the shop, the first thing they saw were dozens of rows of neatly arranged shelves. Every shelf was filled with a dazzling array of goods. At the bottom of each item, the item's grade, price, and function were labeled. As the highest grade of goods sold by the agency was level 8, the highest grade of goods on the shelves was level 8. As time passed, more and more Sea Soul Masters walked into the shop. Even Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Bai Saishi, the high priest, walked into the shop and looked at the products on the shelves. I've never seen these goods before. I've never heard of them. Are they really as good as what's written on them? They're really available at all prices. A group of sea soul masters walked in front of the shelves and looked at the goods on the shelves as they discussed. As for whether they're real or fake, you'll know when you buy one. Tang Chen's calm voice sounded in the shop. Give me a Soul Wang Dan. A level 59 Sea Soul King took out 1,600,000 soul coins to buy a Soul Wang Dan. In an instant, all the Sea Spirit Masters in the shop focused their attention on the Sea Spirit King. Not long after this Sea Soul King swallowed the Soul Wang Dan, a majestic wave of soul power surged from his body. In just a few seconds, his soul power increased tremendously. Oh my God! Level 60! He really broke through. Looks like these goods are really as good as what they're described. As more and more Sea Soul Masters bought the goods on the shelves, they verified the authenticity of the goods one by one. These people, especially those Sea Soul Masters who had a lot of treasures, were excited beyond words. Looking at their excited faces, it was as if they had found a shortcut to cultivation. 5 days later, in the square of the Sea God's Temple, Chu Bei looked at the crowded All-Heaven shop and smiled with satisfaction. In these 5 days, the All-Heaven shop had become a paradise for the rich on the Sea God's Island. It was a place of dreams. Since the second day of the All-Heaven shop's opening, the shop's door had never been closed. There was always a long queue in front of the shop. It wasn't just the Sea God's Island. In these few short days, the various large cities in the inland had an additional must-visit place. Naturally, it was also this shop. Due to the All-Heaven shop's clear prices and the miraculous effects of their products, it quickly spread among the commoners and soul cultivators. Whether it was in the taverns or on the streets, the All-Heaven shop was a hot topic of discussion. Star Luo Empire. Under the azure sky, the golden glazed roof of the palace appeared especially splendid. Around the main hall, ancient trees towered into the sky, providing shade. The inner pillars of the hall were supported by many giant red pillars, and each pillar was engraved with a coiling, lifelike golden dragon. It was a spectacular sight. The 2 dragons on the cornice had golden scales and golden armor. They looked very lifelike, as if they wanted to soar into the sky. At this moment, the Star Luo Emperor was sitting at the head of the table, listening to the ministers below talking about the major events that had happened in the empire. Your Majesty, the All-Heaven shop's reputation is growing by the day. It's only been 4 days, but his name has already spread throughout the empire. Yes, branches have been set up in all the major cities of the empire. They're packed with people every day, and business is booming. But I don't know why, but even those remote cities have branches, but our grand imperial city doesn't have any. Speaking of which, the treasures in the shop are really miraculous. As long as you have the money, you can even change your martial soul. In the main hall, the ministers were all talking about the All-Heaven's shop. It's the same in the Heaven Do Empire. The Star Luo Emperor swept his gaze across the ministers. Let's just let the shop develop. It's impossible to stop it. As for why there are no shops in the Imperial City, I'm guessing it's because Mu Bai hasn't returned yet. 7 Treasures Glazed Sect. Sect Master Boss Chu's words are true. His business empire has really been established, and its scale and effects are terrifying. It's far beyond our imagination. Gu Rong looked at Ning Fingji and couldn't help but sigh. Who do you think this Boss Chu is? Where did his goods come from? Why are they endless? Ning Fingji was puzzled. The more he thought about it, the deeper his frown became. It's Rong Rong's fortune that he took a fancy to him. Gu Rong sighed again. But I don't know where they are now. Ning Fingji muttered. Clear Sky Sect. I didn't expect the All-Heaven shop to become famous across the Doluo continent in just a few days. Tang Xiao couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at the distant horizon. The situation on the continent is changing too quickly. What's surprising is that the 2 empires' attitude towards the All-Heaven shop is to allow it to develop without any concern. said a graceful and noble woman. I'm afraid they can't afford to offend the person behind the All Heavens shop, Tang Xiao said faintly. He turned to the beautiful woman. We've been in seclusion for long enough. Let the people in the sect prepare to tell the outside world that the Clear Sky sect is coming back. Brother Xiao, I've been waiting for you to say that. The beautiful woman was delighted. She immediately turned and left. Martial Spirit Hall's headquarters, Pope Palace's conference hall. Reporting to Your Holiness, after repeated investigations, I've confirmed that the owner of this All Heavens shop is the same person who injured you at Heaven's Vault Mountain. A black-clothed man hurriedly ran into the large conference hall with a respectful expression. It's really him. After hearing the black-clothed man's report, Bibi Dong's beautiful eyes narrowed. There was a hint of coldness in her clear voice. I've followed your instructions and entered several shops. These shops look exactly the same, and the prices of the same products are also the same. It seems to be a uniform price. As for the use of the products, they're all as described. The goods are genuine. The black-clothed man added. Almost 100 identical shops appeared out of thin air on the Doluo continent overnight. How did he do it? Bibi Dong frowned. Her face was filled with confusion. Pope, the influence of the All Heavens shop is not inferior to that of our Martial Spirit Hall. If they continue to develop, I'm afraid that even our Martial Spirit Hall will fall behind. From what I know, even with your orders, there are still some deacons from the Martial Spirit Hall who secretly go to the All Heavens shop and spend money to increase their soul power. The black-clothed man continued. Since you've said so, let's pull them out one by one. Bibi Dong looked at the black-clothed man. The scepter in her hand trembled slightly as she gave the order. I'll do it right away. After receiving Bibi Dong's orders, the black-clothed man bowed and immediately left the hall. Chapter 228. Boss Chu, you're here. On the plaza of the Sea God's Palace, Chu Bei had just arrived in front of the All Heavens shop when a group of Sea Soul Masters lined up in an orderly manner hurriedly greeted him. Chu Bei responded with a smile and a nod. Although only 4 days had passed, the system's evaluation showed that the All Heavens shop's reputation in the Doluo continent had reached 81, not far from 95. Boss Chu, the Martial Soul Hall is here to invade, please help. Just as Chu Bei entered the shop, an anxious cry for help sounded in his mind. Hearing this, the smile on Chu Bei's face disappeared. With a wave of his right hand, a pitch-black opening appeared, and he stepped in. Almost at the same time, Tang San, Dai Mubai Oscar, and the others who were cultivating not far away with void sound transmission stones heard the cry for help. After that, they looked at each other and left through their void sound transmission stones. Shinoa City was the closest city to the Martial Soul Hall. Although the city was not as prosperous as the imperial cities of the two empires, because it was closer to the headquarters of the Martial Soul Hall, its scale was not something an ordinary city could compare to. 4 days ago, ever since the All Heavens Shops branch was set up in the plaza in the center of the city, the already lively plaza became even more noisy and crowded. It could be said that there was a sea of people at all times, especially in front of the shop, where there were people of the past and people of the future. It was extremely crowded. However, at the time when there should be a long line in front of the shop, there was a huge empty space in front of the shop. There were only 2 groups of people dressed in black in this empty space. The most obvious feature of these people in black was the eye-catching soul word on their robes. Looking further away, there were the Soul Masters who had originally lined up to buy goods in the city. Why are the Soul Hall people here? Look at them, they don't have good intentions. In my opinion, they must be here to suppress the All Heavens shop. Just as I thought. After all, the All Heavens shop is really amazing. It has all kinds of treasures. It is now like a holy land in our hearts. The Martial Soul Hall is probably worried that their position will be shaken by the All Heavens shop. I just don't know what the background of the All Heavens shop is, and if it can withstand the suppression of the Martial Soul Hall. The crowd of onlookers looked at the All Heavens shop and discussed animatedly, worry in their eyes. What's the meaning of this? A young man in white, about 16 or 17 years old, looked at the leading expert of the Martial Spirit Palace with a gloomy face. As a second-level agent, he was now a level 45 soul ancestor thanks to the commission he earned from his sales. But this person from the Martial Soul Hall in front of him was at least a soul emperor, judging from how much stronger his soul force undulations were compared to his own. We've received orders that all cities with branches of the Martial Spirit Palace are not allowed to have All Heavens shops. The leader of the Martial Spirit Palace said coldly. Why? The white-clothed youth's expression turned even uglier. Almost every city on the continent had a branch of the Martial Spirit Hall. If what the other party said was true, there would be no place for the All Heavens shop. Because we are the Martial Spirit Palace. The man in black looked at the young man in white with disdain. After a cold snort, he waved his hand at his subordinates behind him. Move everything away! What a Martial Spirit Palace! But before the man in black's subordinates could step forward, a mocking voice suddenly floated in the air and floated in the ears of everyone present. In the next moment, a ripple appeared in front of the white-clothed youth and a figure walked out from it. Boss, you're so fast! Seeing the appearance of the person who came, the white-clothed youth was happy and excited. You've done well. Chu Bei looked back at the white-clothed youth and nodded approvingly. Then, his eyes returned to the group of people from the Martial Spirit Palace. We've received orders from His Majesty the Pope. Seeing the way Chu Bei appeared, the leader of the Martial Spirit Palace frowned. But before he could finish speaking, the air suddenly became dead silent. Then, a huge energy palm with a terrifying aura swept across in his line of sight. Under this aura, the man in black only felt that his soul power was imprisoned and he couldn't even summon his martial soul. Bang! There was a loud bang. The group of people from the Martial Spirit Palace, including the man in black, were all swept by the huge energy palm. The moment their bodies exploded, the piles of flesh and blood were annihilated into nothingness by the aftermath of the huge palm. From Chu Bei's appearance to killing the group of people from the Martial Spirit Palace, it could be described as lightning. It was so fast that even the onlookers couldn't react immediately. After a long while. Dead? The people from the Martial Spirit Palace are all dead. Who is he? He's so powerful. Didn't you hear the shop owner call him boss? Could it be that he is the real boss behind the All Heavens shop? He killed the experts of the Martial Spirit Palace in front of so many people. Is he going against the Martial Spirit Palace? After recovering from the shock, the onlookers focused on Chu Bei. While they were discussing, their faces were full of horror. The void trembled and several figures appeared out of thin air. It was Dai Mubai, Tang San and the others who had just arrived. Has the boss killed them? Listening to the discussion around them, Dai Mubai, Oscar and the others looked at each other. Everyone, I'm really sorry that the guys from the Martial Spirit Palace had affected your shopping experience. Now that everything is back to normal, you can enter the shop to buy the goods you want. Chu Bei's gaze swept across the crowd of onlookers. As his voice fell, the crowd reacted and once again swarmed towards the shop. 2 hours later. Martial Spirit Palace Headquarters, Pope's Palace Conference Hall. Pope, what should we do now? A deacon of the Martial Spirit Palace looked at Bibi Dong respectfully. Let's put this matter aside for now. Bibi Dong's face was gloomy. It's just a shop. Even if he builds a business empire, so what? Shortly after the deacon in black left, Bibi Dong seemed to have made some kind of decision and left the hall with the scepter. Martial Spirit Palace, Doluo Palace. The Doluo Palace was located at the top of the Martial Spirit Palace's Divine Mountain. Compared to the Pope's Palace, it was smaller. However, the overall architectural style gave people a sense of grandeur. There were no gorgeous decorations in the Doluo Palace. The whole place was built with simple rocks. At a glance, one would find that on these simple rocks, there were square, bright golden plaques. Each plaque symbolized a titled Doloa who had been conferred a title after the Doloa Palace was built. There were no less than 100 plaques. In the middle of the Doloa Palace, there was a statue. It was a 10-meter tall, bright golden statue. 3 pairs of wings stretched out behind its back. It raised a huge golden sword in its hand and pointed it to the sky, like a holy angel. "Why are you looking for me?" Suddenly, a dignified and calm voice sounded in the Doloa Palace. The golden light surged, and a figure appeared between Bibi Dong and the huge statue. The figure gradually became clearer, and the golden light around it became stronger. Especially the huge 6-winged angel statue. The huge golden sword spewed out flames that were more than 10 feet long. The entire palace was filled with an indescribable holy aura. The figure that appeared in front of Bibi Dong was the Grand Consecrator of the Martial Spirit Palace, the Palace Master of the Doloa Palace, Qian Daolu. He was also the person with the highest cultivation in the Martial Spirit Palace. He was a rank 99 peak Doloa. "Why do you think I'm looking for you? Although you don't care about the continent in name, you know everything that's going on in the outside world. I'm sure you've heard about the famous All Heavens shop in the past few days." Bibi Dong looked coldly at Qian Daolu. There was no respect on his face. "Can you stop it from developing? The things in the shop are all treasures. If the quality of the goods is higher, I'm afraid even I would want to patronize it." Qian Daolu looked at Bibi Dong mockingly. "Stop it!" Bibi Dong shook his head. "I want to take it for myself. Don't tell me you want him to submit to the Martial Spirit Palace?" Qian Daoliu's body shone with golden light, and he looked even more holy. "With his strength, do you think he'll agree?" Bibi Dong glanced at Qian Daolu, his voice indifferent. "What are you trying to say?" Qian Daolu looked at Bibi Dong calmly. "Kill him with the angel god armor." Bibi Dong's eyes narrowed, and killing intent surged in his eyes. "We'll see." Qian Daolu shook his head. "To deal with someone who can defeat the deep-sea demon whale king, we have to plan carefully." Qian Daolu then said, "Bibi Dong, I hope you can let go of Sun Ji. Haha, I'll remember this debt. Sooner or later, I'll make the angel clan pay the price." Without waiting for Qian Daolu to finish speaking, Bibi Dong's eyes narrowed, and a monstrous aura burst forth from his body. As his cold voice fell, he walked out of the hall step by step. 3 days later, Chu Bei looked at the slowly increasing reputation on the system interface and fell into deep thought. Tang San Dai Mubai and the others had already set up shop in the designated area according to his request. It was reasonable to say that the All Heavens shop's reputation should have reached 95. But even though everyone on the continent knew about it, the shop's reputation had only reached 90, and there was also the bonus from the sea creatures in the sea. Kind reminder: the host can increase the All Heavens shop's reputation through the Elite Soul Master Tournament. Just as Chu Bei was thinking about how to increase his reputation, the system's voice rang in his mind. Elite Soul Master Tournament? Hearing this, Chu Bei was stunned at first, but then, as if he had found a direction, the corners of his mouth rose into a smile. The Elite Soul Master Tournament was the grandest martial soul tournament in the world of soul masters organized by the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire's imperial family. In order to ensure the smooth running of the tournament, the two empires and the Martial Soul Hall would give out generous rewards every year to attract the various academies and powers to participate in the tournament. And this year's tournament was in 7 days. Chapter 229. Unlike the high-level Soul Master Tournament, the top-ranked Soul Master Tournament had an upper limit of rank 80 Soul Sages. Because of this, the number of teams that could participate was extremely limited. In the first few years of the tournament, there were still some second-rate organizations that participated. However, the cruel thing was that the teams sent by the top-ranked organizations were all rank 80 Soul Sages. This made the second-rate organizations unable to resist at all. Gradually, the teams that participated in the top-ranked Soul Master Tournament were fixed. They were the top-ranked organizations. However, even though there were very few teams participating, it was still as lively as the high-level Soul Master Tournament. In fact, it was even more popular. In the top-ranked Soul Master Tournament, every organization would arrange 8 people to form a team and compete. There was no age limit, but there was a soul power requirement. The lowest was a rank 80 Soul Sage. Even though the rules were like this, the actual participants were all rank 80 Soul Sages. In other words, the top-ranked Soul Master Tournament was also a battle between the 80 Soul Sages from the various top-ranked organizations. "Boss, why did you call us here?" Daimyobai was confused as he looked at Chubei. "I want you to participate in the top-ranked Soul Master Tournament in 7 days. Chubei looked at Daimyobai and the other 8 people standing side by side in front of him, and said indifferently, "What? The top-ranked Soul Master Tournament? That's a battlefield for rank 80 Soul Sages." After hearing Chubei's words, Daimyobai, Ningrongrong, and Zhu Zhuqing, who were familiar with top-ranked Soul Master tournaments, opened their mouths wide and stared at Chubei in astonishment. They didn't seem to believe that Chubei would let them participate in such a tournament. "Rongrong, will people die in this tournament?" Ma Hongjun looked at Ningrongrong and asked curiously. "Of course." Ningrongrong nodded. "The top-ranked Soul Master Tournament isn't child's play. They will use their strongest soul skills to win. It's inevitable that there will be casualties. Is it that scary?" Ma Hongjun shrunk his neck. "Why? Don't you have confidence in yourselves or the All-Heavens shop behind you?" Chubei smiled as he looked at the 8 people. Before he unlocked his rank 11 merchandise, his cultivation was limited to a rank 99 Pinnacle Doluo. His proxy could only be a rank 80 Soul Sage at most. Right now, Daimyobai and the other soul power had increased by leaps and bounds through the continuous spending and the commission from the sales of their products. Daimyobai, 11 years old. Rank 80 Soul Sage. His martial soul is the evil-eyed white tiger. Oscar, 8 years old, rank 80 Soul Sage. Auxiliary type martial soul sausage. Ningrongrong, 5 years old, rank 71 Soul Sage, auxiliary type martial soul, 9 treasures glazed pagoda. Wan Fan, 7 years old, level 61 Soul Emperor, golden horn beast. Tang San, 6 years old, rank 61 Soul Emperor. Control type martial soul, blue silver grass. Assault type martial soul, clear sky hammer. Xiao Wu, 5 years old. Rank 61 Soul Emperor. Beast soul, soft bone demon rabbit. Ma Hongjun, 6 years old. Rank 41 Soul Ancestor. Beast soul, evil phoenix. Zhu Zhuqing, 5 years old, a level 41 Soul Ancestor. Her martial soul is the Netherworld Civet. As Oscar and Daimyobai were the first to spend money, their soul power had already reached the upper limit of spending money. As for Ma Hongjun and Zhu Zhuqing, who were the last to sign the contract, they had also reached level 41 through spending money. "Boss, do I have to participate too? I'm only level 41. Ma Hongjun raised his head and looked weakly at Chubei. "There are still 7 days until the competition. That's enough time for you to raise your soul power." Chubei smiled. "Boss, even if our soul power is on par with those guys, our battle experience is far inferior to theirs," Daimyobai said. "There are still 7 days. You can all learn from each other and work together to increase your battle experience. Besides, you still have the All-Heavens shop's treasures to use. If you can catch them off guard, how hard will it be to win the competition?" Chubei crossed his arms in front of his chest, the smile still on his face. After hearing Chubei's words and seeing his confident appearance, Daimyobai, Tang San, and Oscar exchanged glances. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. "Since you don't have any more questions, then go sign up for the competition." Chubei's gaze swept over Daimyobai and the others once more. With a wave of his sleeve, the 8 of them disappeared. Heaven Do City. On the main road 100 meters away from the Imperial Palace, Chubei's group leisurely walked into a luxuriously decorated pavilion. The Martial Spirit Pavilion was built magnificently, and was one of Heaven Do City's landmarks. The Martial Spirit Pavilion was located on the busiest main road in the Imperial City. Because there were Soul Kings and above overseeing it and giving lectures all year round, there were many people coming in and out of the Martial Spirit Pavilion every day. Of course, because this year's Elite Soul Master Tournament was held in Heaven Do City, the Martial Spirit Pavilion also had a heavy responsibility. It was responsible for accepting the top powers and academies that came to sign up for the tournament. "May I ask who you are?" An enchanting female staff member immediately came forward to welcome them. "We're here to sign up for the Elite Soul Master Tournament," Chubei said indifferently. "I'm sorry, but the Soul Master Tournament's registration period has already passed. The finals of the Elite Soul Master Tournament will be held in 4 days. If you're tired from the journey, you can stay in the Martial Spirit Pavilion and head to the Heaven Do Arena to watch the tournament in 4 days." The staff member first sized up Chubei's group in surprise. After all, the participating teams were fixed every year, and there was no such team in front of her. After the initial surprise, the staff member immediately revealed a professional smile. "I'll make an exception this time." Chubei calmly looked at the staff member and said, "I'm the owner of the All Heavens shop." "The All Heavens shop? You're the owner behind the All Heavens shop?" After hearing Chubei's identity, the woman's eyes suddenly shrank, and her expression became aghast. In recent days, the All Heavens shop was in the limelight, and everyone knew about it. What did that staff member just say? The All Heavens shop? Could it be that he's the owner behind the All Heavens shop? It can't be wrong, he's really the owner behind the scenes. Not long ago, I saw him kill a group of people who were causing trouble in the Martial Spirit Pavilion with my own eyes. It's him. Why would the owner of the All Heavens shop come to the Martial Spirit Pavilion? Rumor has it that even the Sword Dolu isn't his match. With his cultivation, there's no need for him to listen to the lectures of those Soul Emperors. I think I heard that he brought people to sign up for the top-rank Soul Master Tournament. Could it be those 8 children behind him? That's impossible. The oldest of them is only 11 or 12 years old, and most of them are only 5 or 6 years old. Their martial souls must have just awakened. The woman's shout attracted many people. Some of them had seen Chubei before, and they excitedly surrounded him. "Boss Chu, I don't know if you can make an exception. Please take a seat, and I'll immediately report this matter to my superiors." The woman respectfully arranged for Chubei and the others to sit in a luxurious room before quickly leaving. Heaven Do Imperial Palace, Main Hall. Sitting in the center of the hall was a person wearing a golden red robe and a dazzling golden diamond crown. Although he was a little old, he had an invisible aura as he sat there. This person was the Emperor of the Heaven Do Empire, the Snowy Night Emperor. On the first seat to the left of the Snowy Night Emperor sat a person wearing a white robe and a purple gold crown. He was the sect leader of the 7 Treasures Glazed sect, Ningfingji. On the first seat to the right of the Snowy Night Emperor sat a red-robed person. From the pentagonal platinum crown on his head, one could tell that this person was the Hall Master of the Heaven Do City's Martial Soul Temple, and the Platinum Bishop of the Martial Soul Temple. What do you think about this? The Snowy Night Emperor glanced at Ningfingji and the Platinum Bishop as he asked. "I've just asked Her Majesty. Her opinion is that the top-ranked Soul Master Tournament is a grand event for the entire continent. Since the tournament hasn't started yet, there's no harm in making an exception," the Platinum Bishop said. "I don't object either. However, is Boss Chu really going to let those 8 children participate?" Ningfingji frowned. One of the children was his precious daughter. "Since there's no objection, let them participate." The Snowy Night Emperor made his decision. As long as their teams meet the requirements, so what if they have children? The main road of the Imperial City, the Martial Soul Pavilion. A staff member pushed open the door to the room where Chubei and the others were. "Boss Chu, the higher-ups have decided that you can make an exception and participate in the finals. As for your team members, it's the 8 of them." Chubei pointed at Dai Mubai and the others with a faint smile on his face. Please follow me to register your information. The staff member took a deep breath. Although he had guessed it from the start, he couldn't help but feel a wave of emotions when he confirmed that these 8 children would be the seeded team to participate in the tournament. The Heaven Do Empire's imperial city is so majestic. Looking at the city walls in front of him, Ma Hongjuan's face was filled with excitement. His expression was even more exaggerated than a country bumpkin entering a city for the first time. The city walls were 80 meters tall and looked extremely majestic up close. The thickness of the city walls was more than 30 meters, and they were completely made of granite. Today was the day of the continent's top-ranked Soul Master Tournament, and the Heaven Do Empire placed great importance on it. The city walls were filled with patrolling Soul Masters. For this tournament, the Heaven Do Empire had even specially built a new tournament venue 3 months ago. Little fellows, are you confident in becoming the champions now? Chu Bei's gaze swept across Tang San, Dai Mubai, and Oscar. We're determined to win. Loud and clear voices rang out in unison. Yu Xiaojing, who was following beside them, looked at the 8 of them with high fighting spirit, and revealed a faint smile on his face. After another 7 days, Ma Hongjun and Zhu Zhuqing, who were the last to sign the contract, had become rank 80 soul sages. Furthermore, they had both passed the Sea God's 7 tests and obtained great opportunities. As for their battle experience, they had also improved tremendously. Because of the Soul Master Tournament, the Heaven Do Imperial City was incomparably bustling today. Soul Masters wearing all kinds of robes walked to and fro on the main roads. Oh right, do you know how many teams are participating in the tournament today? It seems to be the same as the previous years. There are a total of 11 teams. Hee, you're wrong about that. 7 days ago, a new team joined. This team belongs to the All Heavens Shop, so there are currently 5 out of 12 teams. The All Heavens Shop? TSK, the boss Chu behind the All Heavens Shop is amazing. According to the news, he's also an ultimate Doloa like the Martial Soul Hall's head consecrator, Qian Dao Lu. Do you know about the battle at Heaven's Vault Mountain? 2 titled Doloa from the Martial Soul Hall died at his hands, and even Pope Bibi Dong almost died. Who told you to talk about Boss Chu? Who on the continent doesn't know how strong Boss Chu is? What I want to know is information about the team representing the All Heavens Shop in the tournament. Speaking of teams, the All Heavens Shop seems to be just going through the motions. They're just here to play. According to internal information, the oldest in the All Heavens Shop's team is only 11 years old, and the youngest is only 5 years old. Damn, this Boss Chu is really willful. But with his strength, I'm sure the other teams won't dare to be too ruthless against this seeded team. Chu Bei's group walked on the main road, and from time to time, they could hear the intense discussions of the people around them. As expected of a top-ranked Soul Master tournament, it's so lively. Dai Mubai couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the dense crowd around them. In the past, Daddy would bring me to watch the Soul Master tournament every year. But I never dreamed that I would actually participate as a contestant this year. Grandpa Jian, Grandpa Gu, and Daddy, I really want to know what their expressions will be when they see me win. Ning Rongrong's little face was full of excitement. Soon, Chu Bei's group arrived at the venue of the Soul Master tournament. Because of the importance of the Heaven Do Empire, the entire tournament venue was surrounded by a huge and open plaza. As far as the eye could see, the plaza was already filled with countless cheering spectators. In the center of the plaza was a circular brick platform with a diameter of 150 meters. From afar, it reflected a resplendent and sparkling light, giving people a sense of luxury and nobility. Behind the brick platform was a rostrum with a golden background. The rostrum's layout was a little special. The 7 luxurious and exquisite chairs weren't arranged in a straight line. Instead, they were arranged in an arc. Perhaps it was because of some special adjustments, the 7 seats didn't have a hierarchy. At this moment, 6 of the 7 seats on the rostrum were already occupied. Behind the rostrum were rows of VIP seats, which could also be said to be the seats of the participating teams. At a glance, 11 teams were already seated. Perhaps we can only see so many powerful people at once on such an important day like the top-ranked Seoul Master Tournament. The Heaven Do Empire's Snowy Night Emperor, the Star Luo Empire's White Tiger Emperor, the Martial Seoul Hall's Pope, Bibi Dong, the Seven Treasures Glazed Sex Sect Leader, Ning Fingji, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sex Sect Leader, Yu Tianhao, almost all the most powerful people on the continent are here. It's a pity that the Clear Sky Sex Sect Leader is missing. Eh? Who's that white-haired elder sitting beside Pope Bibi Dong? I've watched the top-ranked Seoul Master Tournament 2 years ago, but I've never seen him before. It's normal that you haven't seen him before. He has a great background. The Doluo Palace's Grand Consecrator, Qian Daolu, is the strongest person in the world right now. He's a rank 99 Pinnacle Doluo. Gasp, Pinnacle Doluo. How terrifying. But who's the one that's still empty? It must be Boss Chu's. I can't wait to see the glory of the owner of the All Heavens shop. In the plaza, the spectators who were already seated all looked at the rostrum. Their eyes were filled with excitement as they discussed. Chapter 230. All Heaven Shop's representative team, enter! Just as the spectators were discussing animatedly, a vigorous voice suppressed the clamor and floated in the air. The speaker was a rank 85 Seoul Doluo. He was a consecrator of the Heaven Do imperial family, but today, he was the MC. In an instant, everyone's gazes shifted from the main stage to the entrance of the special passageway. Almost at the same time, the 6 people who had already taken their seats on the rostrum also turned their heads to look at him. The leader should be Boss Chu, right? He's so young. He doesn't look like he's the same age as the other 6. Don't you know that once you reach a certain level, you can completely regain your youth? In my opinion, Boss Chu is definitely an old man who's lived for several hundred years. The source of the news was right. All Heaven Shop's team is a bunch of brats. But with this team, it'll definitely be a lot more fun. The crowd started discussing again. As expected, I can't see through him. Thousand Das Lu carefully sized up Chu Bei. His brows furrowed, and he couldn't help but shake his head. Ever since Chu Bei's team had entered the arena, the happiest team in the VIP stands was the Fire Leopard sect. Because the Peak Seoul Master Tournament was held every year, the next year's teams would be divided into Rank 1 and Rank 2 teams based on the previous year's rankings. The previous year's top 5 teams would be Rank 1 teams, while the bottom 6 teams would be Rank 2 teams. In the next year's tournament, Rank 2 teams would be free to choose Rank 1 teams as their first opponents. Although it was free to choose, there was a hierarchy. The Rank 2 team would be the first to choose. In previous years' competitions, even if the strongest second-class team chose the weakest first-class team, there was an 80% to 90% chance that the weakest first-class team would be defeated in a single match. As for the Rank 2 team in the last place, they usually didn't have a choice. They could only choose the strongest Rank 1 team as their opponent. Because of this, Rank 2 teams didn't even think about entering the second round. Most of the time, they just went through the motions. The highlight of the tournament was always the Rank 1 teams. However, this year was different. As an exception, the All Heavens shop was placed in a first-class team. Their Fire Leopard sect just so happened to be in first place among the second-ranked teams. In other words, they could choose the All Heavens shop's team to fight in the first round. With the addition of this group of children, they were confident that they could enter the second round. They didn't need to be eliminated in the first round like in previous years. After today's top-ranked Seoul Master Tournament, they would be burdened with a brand new glory, as they had defeated a Class 1 team. Even if this first-level team was formed by a group of children. Boss Chu, please have a seat. Immediately, the arena was filled with thunderous applause, and cheers rose and fell. When the applause dissipated, Emperor Shuiyi glanced at Chu Bei, and then swept his gaze across everyone in the arena. He continued, I'm sure all of you have seen that unlike previous years, there's one more first-ranked team this year. Boss Chu has built a famous business empire in just a few days, and his abilities are unfathomable. He can even be ranked in the top 3 of the continent. Next, let's invite Boss Chu to say a few words for this year's tournament. Chu Bei was a little stunned. He didn't expect him to be asked to give a speech in the tournament. Then I hope that all the soul masters who are participating in this tournament, for the sake of the sect, for the sake of the academy, and for your own glory, can unleash your abilities to the fullest. Soul masters are the noblest profession on the continent, and every bit of progress you make has to go through many trials and tribulations. But what I want to say is that the sharpness of a sword is forged through hard work, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. All of you who are able to participate in this tournament are clearly the strongest people below Soul Doluo. Even if you lose in the next round, don't be discouraged. Turn this defeat into motivation for you to work hard and move forward. When they heard this, the soul sages in the VIP seats who were about to participate in the tournament felt their blood boil, and their fighting spirit was ignited. However, Chu Bei's next sentence made them doubt their lives. Even if some of your teams will be suppressed by a bunch of kids in this year's tournament, and the champions will be taken by a bunch of kids, don't think that you're dreaming. There's always someone better than you, and everything is possible. After he finished speaking, Chu Bei tidied his clothes and smiled at everyone before returning to his seat. Clap, clap, clap. Instantly, the crowd erupted into applause that was much louder than the Snowy Night Emperor's opening speech. Boss Chu can do it. When he started, I was so excited, but I was caught off guard when he changed the topic. Don't take it seriously. Boss Chu was only joking to liven up the atmosphere. Do you really think that a group of children can win against one of the teams? Just as I thought, Boss Chu probably just wants these kids to get to know these soul sages as soon as possible so that they can set a goal for themselves. Which team do you think will be the champions this year? Nonsense, do you even need to ask? The Martial Soul Hall has been the champions for 13 consecutive years. This year will be no exception. In the spectators' stands, there was no lack of shocked voices amidst the intense clamor. All participating teams, please come up. As the MC's majestic voice fell, the 12 teams in the VIP seats quickly appeared on the huge battle stage. There were 6 Class 1 teams: Heaven Do Empire, Star Luo Empire, Martial Soul Hall, 7 Treasures Glazed Sect, Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect, and All Heaven's Shop. There were 6 Class 2 teams: Fire Leopard Sect, Elephant Armor Sect, Purple Star Academy, Radiance Academy, Oakland Academy, and Blazing Academy. As the champions of the Class 2 teams, according to the rules, you'll be the first to choose the Class 1 teams. The MC looked at the 8 soul sages from the Fire Leopard Sect and said calmly, All Heaven's Shop! As the representative of the Fire Leopard Sect, Wang Shan spoke without hesitation. The first match, Fire Leopard Sect versus All Heaven's Shop. The MC's expression didn't change at all when he heard Wang Shan's decision. It was as if he had expected it. The Elephant Armor Sect looked at the Fire Leopard Sect enviously before choosing the Heaven Do Empire's Class 1 team. Very quickly, the rest of the teams had their results. Purple Star Academy vs Star Luo Empire. Radiance Academy vs 7 Treasures Glazed Sect. Oakland Academy vs Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect. Blazing Academy vs Martial Soul Hall. Are we still going to fight? Listen to the elders. It's our turn. We'll just fight casually and admit defeat after the ceremony. Sigh, if only our opponents were the 8 kids from All Heaven's Shop. I'm so envious of the Fire Leopard Sect. The 8 contestants from Blazing Academy looked at each other and spoke with a hint of self-mockery. It was hopeless for them to fight against the most powerful martial spirit palace. The Fire Leopard Sect and All Heaven's Shop were already in their positions on the large stage. Compared to the Fire Leopard Sect, All Heaven's Shop's team stood out and attracted a lot of attention. The tallest of the 8, Dai Mubai, didn't even reach the neck of the shortest soul sage from the Fire Leopard Sect. As for the others, there was no need to talk about them. No matter how one looked at it, one would think that this was a show of 8 adults fighting against 8 dwarves. Chapter 231. Little fellows, what are your names? Because of your boss, the sect leader doesn't want us to hurt you. How about this? Why don't you admit defeat after a few rounds? Wang Shan smiled as he looked at Dai Mubai, Tang San, and the others. After he finished speaking, 7 soul rings lit up on his body. 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 3 black. He was a rank 80 soul sage. Almost at the same time, the other 7 people from the Fire Leopard sect also lit up their soul rings. They were all rank 80 soul sages. You want us to admit defeat? You don't have the right to do that. Dai Mubai, Tang San, and the others didn't show any fear as they watched the 8 soul sages from the Fire Leopard sect light up their soul rings. After hearing Dai Mubai's words, the 8 people from the Fire Leopard sect couldn't help but twitch their mouths. Little fellows, I'm afraid you don't know what a soul sage means. Wang Shan stepped forward. Just as he was about to tell Dai Mubai and the others about how scary a soul sage was, his expression froze before he could finish his sentence. A soul power undulation that wasn't weaker than theirs was released from the 8 little fellows in front of him. Following this, the 8 little fellows' soul rings lit up at the same time. When they saw the number and color of Dai Mubai's, Tang San's, and the other soul rings, the 8 people from the Fire Leopard sect were stunned. They seemed to have lost their voices. They wanted to say something, but couldn't say anything for a long time. The cheers and discussions from the spectators also stopped for a moment. 7 soul rings, soul sage! All of them are 100,000-year soul rings! Looking at Ning Rongrong's 7 soul rings that were all red, Ning Fingji, who was on the rostrum, trembled. His pupils suddenly shrank, and that exaggerated expression was completely different from what a sect leader of the 3 upper sects should have. How is this possible? Ning Fingji took a deep breath. He couldn't help but look at Chu Bei. Boss Chu, how did you do it? Ning Fingji didn't even dare to dream that a mischievous, ignorant, and incompetent second generation like him would become a soul sage before he was 6 years old. Furthermore, all of his soul rings were 100,000-year soul rings. The Star Luo Empire's White Tiger Emperor was just as shocked as Ning Fingji. His youngest son had only been a soul elder when he left a few days ago, but now he was a soul sage. Furthermore, all of his soul rings had become 100,000-year soul rings. It wasn't just Ning Fingji and the White Tiger Emperor. The Snowy Night Emperor, Yu Tianhao, Bibi Dong, and even the 1,000 Das Lu were all stunned. Every single one of their eyes were filled with disbelief. Their gazes towards Chu Bei were not only filled with shock, but also deep confusion. If only one of the 8 people from the All Heavens shop was a soul sage with 100,000-year soul ring, it would have been fine. However, the truth was that all 8 of them were soul sages with 100,000-year red soul rings. A 100,000-year soul ring was ranked first on the dream list of soul masters. Even for titled Doluo, it was extremely tempting. Not even 1 in 10 titled Doluo had a 100,000-year soul ring. However, the 8 members of the All Heavens shop each had 7 of such rare soul rings. The 56 red lights that blossomed at the same time were extremely eye-catching. Since when could 100,000-year soul rings be mass-produced like this? For the All Heavens shop, a 100,000-year soul ring is nothing as long as you have money. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Ning Fingji indifferently. Even if you have the strength to kill a 100,000-year soul beast for Rong Rong, how can her body withstand the spiritual impact of a 100,000-year soul beast? Ning Fingji wasn't the only one who was puzzled. 1,000 Das Lu, Bibi Dong, and the others were also puzzled. Perhaps if they could solve this mystery, soul masters would be able to break through their shackles when they absorbed soul rings. This would allow the strength of soul masters on the entire continent to increase by leaps and bounds. Our shop's soul rings don't have any side effects. You can buy them directly to equip yourself, Chu Bei said casually. At this moment, the spectators in the spectator stands recovered from their shock. 5 or 6-year-old soul sages. All of their soul rings are 100,000-year soul rings. Am I seeing things? You're not seeing things. The All Heaven Shop's team is too crazy. 5 or 6-year-old soul sages. My God! Logically speaking, their martial souls haven't awakened yet. Yes, I'm on the verge of collapse. These 8 little fellows have already broken my understanding of martial souls and soul power. I don't mean to say this, but any one of them is the most monstrous person on the entire continent. There's one thing you're wrong about. Maybe it's not these little fellows that are monstrous. It's the person who nurtured them that is the true monstrous. What method did Boss Chu use? It's simply too terrifying. This competition is going to be interesting. These 8 little fellows are all soul sages with 100,000-year soul rings. Maybe they can really beat the Fire Leopard sect. Amidst the clamor, the spectators first looked at Dai Mubai's team of 8 before turning their gazes to Chu Bei on the main stage. Their eyes were filled with respect. As expected of Boss Chu's teachings. With their current growth rate, they'll probably become titled Doloa in less than a month. How enviable! On the stage, Wang Shan glanced at the 8 red soul rings flashing on Dai Mubai and Tang San's bodies. He took a deep breath and suppressed the throbbing in his heart. However, soul power alone isn't enough to determine the outcome of this battle. It also depends on battle experience and teamwork. After all, this is a team battle for 8 people. In the face of absolute strength, teamwork and experience are only secondary. Dai Mubai looked at Wang Shan very calmly. Furthermore, in terms of battle experience and teamwork, we might not be inferior to you. Don't worry. I'll say the same thing again. We won't hurt you. Wang Shan's gaze swept across Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing and the others before he turned to his teammates behind him. Fight! As Wang Shan shouted, the 8 people from the Fire Leopard sect transformed into fiery red leopards at the same time. The 2 sharp teeth in their ferocious mouths flashed with cold light. Oscar, Rong Rong! Seeing the Fire Leopard sect's martial souls, Dai Mubai immediately shouted, I have a flying sausage! As Oscar chanted, his 100,000-year soul ring flashed, and 8 mushroom-like sausages appeared in his palm. He left one behind, and threw the other 7 to Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing and the others. The name of the 9 treasures is Soul Power Amplification, Attack Amplification. Ning Rongrong's 200,000-year soul rings flashed, and 7 red halos flew out from her palm and landed on Dai Mubai, Tang San and the others' heads. 9 levels and 9 colors. This is the 9 treasures glazed pagoda. On the main stage, the Snowy Night Emperor stared blankly at the soul rings that lit up in Ning Rongrong's palm. He was astonished. Compared to the 7 treasures glazed pagoda of the 7 treasures glazed pagoda in Ning Rongrong's palm didn't have 7 levels. Instead, it had 9 levels. The colors had also changed from 7 to 9. As the strongest auxiliary-type martial soul, the 7 treasures glazed sect had always had a secret. This secret appeared in their martial soul. Heaven was fair. Perhaps the 7 treasures glazed pagoda's effect on the battlefield was too terrifying, so it had its flaws. The 7 treasures glazed pagoda was called the 7 treasures not only because it had 7 levels, but also because this martial soul could only contain 7 soul rings. It was 2 fewer than normal martial souls. This was also the fundamental reason why Ning Fingji, the sect leader of the glazed sect, was still only at rank 80. According to the legends of the 7 treasures glazed pagoda, once the 7 treasures glazed pagoda evolved into the 9 treasures glazed pagoda, not only would it strengthen the soul master's foundation, but it would also give him more space. Once a soul master who possessed the 9 treasures glazed pagoda became a 9-ring titled Doluo, he would be known as the god of auxiliary. He would have the ability to turn the tables on any battlefield. Ning Fingji, did you already know? Seeing that Ning Fingji's expression didn't change much, the Snowy Night Emperor asked. Ning Fingji nodded and said, When Boss Chu first found Rong Rong to awaken her martial soul, I already knew. Hearing this, the Snowy Night Emperor looked at Chu Bei again and sized him up again. Senior brother, that kid's sausage isn't simple. It can actually make people fly. Seeing that the 8 people from the All Heavens shop were flying in the air after eating the sausage, one of the fire leopard sect's disciples couldn't help but say, "I want to see how long they can fly." Wang Shan roared. Then, his 7th soul ring flashed. His sharp claws were wrapped in a layer of white light as he jumped up and slapped towards Dai Mubai. "You've come at the right time. Let me try out the fruits of my labor over the past few days." Dai Mubai revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Then, he transformed into a white tiger. At the same time, his 100,000-year soul ring lit up. "White tiger annihilation!" After he shouted, Dai Mubai's body exploded with a blinding golden light. His body changed several times in the air before he went straight for Wang Shan. A tiger and a leopard collided in the air. Boom! Gold and white collided. Amidst the loud sound, Dai Mubai retreated slightly before he stabilized his body and continued to hover in the air. As for Wang Shan, his body crashed into the arena like a cannonball. His blood was boiling, and he spat out blood. Even if they're both rank 80 soul sages, how can their soul power be so different? Wang Shan stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He stared at Dai Mubai in disbelief. "Nothing is impossible. Rongrong's martial soul is the 9 treasures glazed pagoda. It's the strongest auxiliary type martial soul." Dai Mubai looked at Wang Shan calmly. "My buff is 40%. Ning Rongrong pointed at her 100,000-year soul ring and made a face at Wang Shan. "Senior brother, let's attack together." Perhaps because they saw that Wang Shan was defeated, the other 7 from the Fire Leopard sect pounced towards Dai Mubai at the same time. "Netherworld slash!" Zhu Zhuqing transformed into a netherworld civet. Her claws formed a blade-shaped shadow as she faced one of the Fire Leopard sect's disciples. "Phoenix cloud-piercing strike!" A fire phoenix appeared behind Ma Hongjun. Its aura was ferocious. "Explosive 8 falls!" Xiaowu bent her body and shot out. Almost at the same time, Ma Hongjun, Xiaowu, and the others each found a target and went forward. Chapter 232. Bang, bang, bang. Amidst the continuous sounds of collisions, all sorts of figures crossed each other. 3 minutes later. This is too unbelievable. The Fire Leopard sect lost. These fellows from the All Heavens shop are too strong. This is simply a crushing defeat. The enhancements from those 2 auxiliary type soul masters are too terrifying. On the stage, Dai Mubai, Ma Hongjun, and the rest were still flying in the air. The 7 from the Fire Leopard sect had already removed their martial souls from their bodies. Wang Shan was sitting on the ground, panting, and all of them were more or less injured. "We've lost." Wang Shan looked at Dai Mubai unwillingly. As a rank 80 soul sage, he didn't expect to lose to a bunch of kids whose average age wasn't even 7 years old. For some reason, he started to regret it. If he had chosen a team from the 2 empires, he might have had a chance to turn things around. As for these fellows from the All Heavens shop, not to mention how powerful their 100,000-year soul skills were, just the 9 treasures glazed pagoda's 80% increase in soul power and attack was enough to make it difficult for them to catch up. What was even more despicable was that their opponent had a food-type auxiliary-type soul master, and that Sausage's ability was flight. Their opponents were in the air, and were in an invincible position. At first, they thought that their flying ability could only last for a few seconds. Who would have thought that their opponents were still flying in the air after the battle ended? "Hee, my flying sausage can fly for 3 days without a problem." Oscar seemed to have seen through Wang Shan's thoughts, and revealed a cheeky expression. "First round, All Heavens Shop vs. Fire Leopard Sect. The All Heavens Shop wins!" The MC took a deep breath and calmed himself down before announcing this unexpected result. "Boss Chu, I didn't expect one of your kids to have a Fire Phoenix martial soul. And that guy called Oscar, he's also an outstanding auxiliary-type soul master. However, why do I feel like there's something else in his eyes every time he looks at Rong Rong?" Ning Fingji glanced at Oscar unhappily. "Let nature take its course. When they're older, they'll understand what they need to understand. Chu Bei naturally understood the meaning behind Ning Fingji's words. Boss Chu, you have to keep an eye on Rong Rong for me. Rong Rong is the future hope of the Seven Treasures Glaze sect, the future sect master, Ning Fingji hurriedly said. Sect Master Ning shouldn't think that kid Oscar is not worthy of your Seven Treasures Glaze sect's young sect master, right? Chu Bei looked at Ning Fingji with a smile. Ning Fingji was at a loss for words. The Star Luo Empire's White Tiger Emperor stared at Dai Mubai in a daze. Dai Mubai's strength had already surpassed most of the imperial family's worshippers. As time went by, the remaining 5 matches in the first round of the competition had their results. The result of the battle was as everyone expected. The seeded team won. Among them, the Blazing Fire Academy that was fighting against the Martial Spirit Palace simply admitted defeat after a few casual moves. However, the crowd did not ridicule him. After all, it was a wise choice. Over the years, everyone had witnessed the strength of the Martial Spirit Palace. 2 hours later, the second round of the competition has begun. The 6 teams that have won, please step onto the stage and draw lots in pairs. The 2 teams that have drawn the same number will compete in a single match. The MC's voice drifted through the air. Soon, the results of the lots were out. The first match was between the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire. The second match was between the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect and the Martial Spirit Palace. The third match was between the All Heavens Shop and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect. In the past, the first 2 teams of the 2 empires have always been at the bottom. I didn't expect them to meet each other this year. Who do you think will win? I don't care. I just want to see the battle between the All Heavens Shop and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect. The battle between those little fellows is really full of love. The battle between the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire's imperial family came to an end. The Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire's imperial family were both rank 80 soul sages. However, the Star Luo Empire's imperial family had an advantage in martial souls, so they won by a hair's breadth. After the battle, the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect and the Martial Spirit Palace's first 2 teams appeared on the stage. The Seven Treasures Glazed Sect admits defeat. After receiving Ning Fingji's gaze, the purple-robed youth led the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect's team down the stage. In the past, they would have been able to fight against the 2 empires. However, they were unlucky this year. They were directly matched against the Martial Spirit Palace. A support-oriented sect was facing the strongest sect, the Martial Spirit Palace. The disparity in strength was too great. There was no need to fight. Ning Fingji turned to Bibi Dong and said calmly, Your Holiness, the Martial Spirit Palace's team this year is not simple. These 8 guys have been secretly nurtured by the Martial Spirit Palace since they were born. They have undergone the harshest training in the Martial Spirit Palace. Originally, we wanted to nurture them to title Doloa before releasing them. Bibi Dong's gaze was fixed on Chu Bei as he spoke. But after thinking about it, the All Heavens Shop has been so high profile recently. The Martial Spirit Palace has to find a suitable time to show off its strength. Your Holiness must be worried that the Martial Spirit Palace will be shaken by the defeat of Heaven's Vault Mountain to Boss Chu. That's why they want to use this tournament to show the Martial Soul Hall's power to the world. Yu Tianhao suddenly said. Bibi Dong didn't reply. He glanced at Yu Tianhao and snorted coldly. His eyes were cold. The All Heavens Shop and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect will enter the stage for the 3rd round. The MC's voice sounded again. After witnessing the first round's match between the All Heavens Shop and the Fire Leopard Sect, the 8 soul sages from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect didn't underestimate Dai Mubai and Oscar. As soon as the MC announced the start of the match, the leader of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect shouted. 7 soul rings lit up around his body, and he transformed into a 3-meter-tall tyrant dragon. The sound of electricity crackling from his head could be heard. At the same time, 6 other people also used the Tyrant Dragon Martial Soul Possession, and all of them had 7 soul rings. Only the last person had 7 soul rings, but his martial soul wasn't the blue lightning tyrant dragon. Instead, it was a building that looked like a pavilion. Clearly, he was an auxiliary-type soul master. Dai Mubai and Oscar exchanged a glance as they sensed the soul power fluctuations coming from the 8 people opposite them. I have a big sausage. I have an excited intestine. I have a flying intestine. The 9 treasures are named Soul Power Amplification. The 9 treasures are named Defense Amplification. The 9 treasures are named Attack Amplification. Against the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, Oscar and Ning Rongrong were the first to unleash their soul skills. At the same time, Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, and the others' auras continued to rise. Blue-Silver Domain, activate. In order to end the match as quickly as possible, Tang San let out a low roar. Strands of blue light instantly spread out from his body, quickly enveloping the entire stage. A domain. That kid actually has a domain. How is this possible? Setting aside the fact that one has to become a titled Doloa to possess a domain, even a titled Doloa would have to be extremely lucky to obtain one. What's there to be shocked about? Nothing is impossible for the All Heavens shop. When Tang San released his blue-silver domain, not only were the spectators shocked, but the people on the main stage were also stirred. Thousand Dao Lu and Bibi Dong exchanged a glance. Aside from astonishment, there was also a hint of undetectable peculiarity in their eyes. In the past, they would have forcibly recruited these terrifying monsters into the Martial Soul Hall. If they didn't want to join the Martial Soul Hall, they would have killed them in the cradle. With the Martial Soul Hall style, they would never allow an existence that could threaten the Martial Soul Hall in the future to grow. However, the most hateful thing was that these monsters were all from the All Heavens shop. They were protected by a mysterious rank 99 Peak Dolo who was half a step into the godly realm. With a Peak Dolo as their backer, these monsters could safely grow until they became overlords. Of course, what Thousand Dao Lu and Bibi Dong were most concerned about was Chu Bei's nurturing methods. If there was only one monster in the All Heavens shop, it could be said that the monster was talented. However, the truth was that the 8 kids in the arena had displayed terrifying talents that were thousands of times more terrifying than ordinary people. This was all because of the boss. Oh my God! These kids from the All Heavens shop are crazy! If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Yeah, no wonder Boss Chu repeatedly emphasized that there's always someone better than you. Even if you're suppressed by kids, you shouldn't be discouraged. At the time, I thought it was a joke, but now it seems like we're the joke. In the VIP stands, Yu Xiaojiang listened to the discussions around him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. As a Class 1 representative, his strength had also increased by leaps and bounds. It wasn't that they were talented, but that their boss was a living god. A true god who could defeat the sea god. You little brats are really shocking. Especially this so-called blue-silver domain, it's actually affecting the circulation of our soul power. It's just that your martial soul is blue-silver grass, so it probably doesn't have much attack power. Yu Feng looked at Tang San, then turned to the only support-type soul master behind him. Fight! The support-type soul master received the order, and a martial soul that resembled a pavilion flickered in his palm. Layers of light enveloped the remaining 7 members of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, and a pair of enormous wings instantly sprouted from their bodies. In the next instant, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect's team flew into the air, just like Tang San and the others. Now you no longer have the advantage in the air. Yu Feng swept his gaze across Dai Mubai, Tang San, and the others. Blue-silver sea! Tang San smiled and ignored Yu Feng. From beginning to end, he hadn't treated Yu Feng as an opponent. As the voice rang out, green plants that resembled vines instantly grew out of the fighting stage below. These vines grew extremely quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they had formed a giant cage in the air. Not only are you restricting our movement space, you're also restricting yourselves. This kind of small-scale battle is the most advantageous for us. Yu Feng's expression didn't change in the slightest as he looked at the green vines around them. Lightning Dragon Head! Yu Feng roared, and his body abruptly shot toward Tang San. At the same time, a massive lightning dragon head condensed in front of his sharp claws. At the same time that Yu Feng attacked, the other 6 members of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect also unleashed their soul skills toward Dai Mubai and the others. Ma Hongjun, protect Oscar. Xiao Wu, protect Ning Rongrong. Brother Mubai, Zhu Qing, Brother Gooden, you 3 attack that support-type Soul Master and take him down as quickly as possible. Yes. Ma Hongjun, Dai Mubai, and the others replied in unison. Clang! Suddenly, the crisp sound of a collision rang out in the air. Yu Feng's attack had landed squarely on the shield in front of Tang San, which was formed from interwoven blue-silver grass. Clang, clang! Another 2 people's attacks arrived, but similarly, they only brought about a crisp sound. Is this still blue-silver grass? It's so tough. Yu Feng swung his sharp claws, which had gone numb from the recoil. His body hovered in the air as he looked at Tang San in astonishment. Not only him, but the other 2 teammates who had attacked at the same time also had expressions of astonishment on their faces. With their rank 80 soul power, they actually couldn't pierce through the most common blue-silver grass. Blue-silver demonic spear. Tang San's gaze swept past Yu Feng. Without waiting for him to react, his 5th soul ring lit up. In the instant that the red light flashed, the surrounding vine-like plants suddenly interwove into 7 long spears. Xiao! The moment the long spears were formed, they pierced toward Yu Feng and the others. Caught off guard, Yu Feng and the other 2 who were closest to Tang San were instantly sent flying by the long spears and smashed into the vines. Blue-silver stab. Tang San's figure flashed and appeared beside Xiao Wu. Another soul ring flickered, and a cone formed by interweaving vines shot out. With a loud bang, another soul sage was sent flying. As for the auxiliary-type soul master from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, he was instantly injured by the combined attacks of Dai Mubai, Zhu Qing, and Wang Fan. Damn it! I didn't expect blue-silver grass to have such strong offensive strength. Yu Feng roared angrily. After breaking free from the vines, he looked at the injured auxiliary-type soul master, and immediately flapped his wings. He led the other 6 people to force Dai Mubai and the others back. You don't have to support everyone at the same time. Just support me with all your strength. Yu Feng looked at the auxiliary-type soul master. Right now, his priority was to defeat Tang San, who had a domain. Inside the domain, the circulation of their soul power was a little sluggish, and they couldn't unleash their full fighting strength. Understood. The auxiliary-type soul master nodded. The martial soul in his palm flashed, and the light rings above the other 6 people's heads landed on Yu Feng's body at the same time. In an instant, Yu Feng's soul power undulations rose to another level. Chapter 233. Tyrant Dragon's Fury! When Yu Feng's soul power reached its peak, his soul rings flickered and his entire body began to spin. With a whoosh, a tyrannical wave of soul power blasted towards Tang San. It was extremely fast and arrived in the blink of an eye. Clang! Another series of similar crisp sounds rang out. Yu Feng's spinning body smashed into Tang San's blue-silver grass shield tablet. However, no matter how much force he exerted, the blue-silver grass shield tablet was not damaged in the slightest. Amidst the continuous buzzing sound, Yu Feng's spinning speed gradually slowed down until he stabilized his body. Damn it, it's clearly just blue-silver grass. Looking at the indestructible blue-silver grass shield tablet, Yu Feng's face was filled with resentment. With this level of defense, his opponent was already in an invincible position. Blue-silver stab! Without giving Yu Feng a chance to retreat, Tang San's soul rings lit up and an attack landed on Yu Feng's body. Yu Feng was sent flying once again, but this time Tang San followed closely behind. Tang San's left and right hands clasped together, controlling the blue-silver grass to form a long spear and fiercely thrusted it towards Yufeng's armor. Kacha! With a crisp sound, a crack appeared on the surface of Yufeng's armor. Immediately after, a pitch-black long spear that resembled a spider's leg appeared behind Chu Bei and quickly pierced into the crack. The tip of the spear had some green liquid as it directly pierced into Yufeng's body. The insertion and removal of the pitch-black long spear could be said to have happened in the blink of an eye. "I've really underestimated you." With a flip of his body, Yufeng narrowly avoided Tang San's second blue-silver stab. "Since I can't hurt you, I can only take down your support-type teammate first." Looking at the blue-silver grass shield tablet in front of Tang San, Yufeng couldn't help but feel a sense of powerlessness in his heart. After thinking for a moment, he targeted Ning Rongrong. "Tyrant Dragon's Fury!" But just as Yufeng was about to use his soul skill again, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. The condensed soul skill instantly dissipated and the blood in his chest roiled, causing him to uncontrollably spit out a mouthful of blood. "I advise you to admit defeat now. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I won't be able to save you if it's too late." Tang Sanshao looked at Yufeng, a little complacent between his brows. "What did you do to me?" Yufeng resisted the pain in his chest as he coldly looked at Tang San. "You were just poisoned by me." Tang San's body flashed as soon as he finished speaking. His right fist transformed into metal as he punched a soul sage from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect. Pucci! Seeing his companion being beaten down by Tang San, Yufeng had the intention to help. However, just as he circulated his soul force, his entire body felt as if it was being pierced by needles. The pain was unbearable. Thump, thump! Tang San took care of the 3 soul sages from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect in one fell swoop, and just as he was about to unleash another attack, the wings on the bodies of the 2 tyrant dragons suddenly disappeared, and they plummeted straight down from the sky. Tilting his head, he saw Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, and Wang Fan proudly showing off their results. The support-type Soul Master had almost lost consciousness under their combined attacks. "Holy shit, even the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect is at a disadvantage. Aren't those brats from the All Heavens shop a little too strong? I didn't think that trash of a martial soul like Blue Silver Grass would possess such terrifying offensive and defensive power. If this continues, those 6- and 7-year-old kids really could surprise us and become the champions of this year's Soul Master Tournament. Did you guys see that? That Yufeng from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect seems to have been poisoned." The spectators in the spectator stands were abuzz with discussion. On the rostrum, Chu Bei's gaze landed on Yu Tianhao. "Do you still want them to continue fighting? That guy has been poisoned by Little Three's bone poison. He doesn't have much time left. Forget it, a loss is a loss." After a moment of silence, Yu Tianhao took a deep breath and transmitted his soul power to the 8 people on the stage. On the stage, Yu Feng's originally yellow skin had already turned green, and from his mouth, he could not help but groan in pain. After hearing Yu Tianhao's voice, he endured the pain and made a gesture of surrender to Tang San, Dai Mubai, and the others. The All Heavens Shop versus the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect. The All Heavens Shop is victorious! After the MC announced the result of the match, Tang San landed beside Yufeng and stabbed a spider spear into his body. A drop of green liquid flowed from Yufeng's body into the spider spear. Almost at the same time, Yufeng's complexion improved, and his pained expression gradually eased. Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, Oscar, and the others stood behind Tang San. Even though they had won the battle against the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, they didn't look excited. It was as if the result of this battle was already within their expectations. After the match between the All Heavens Shop and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect concluded, the MC walked to the center of the stage and said, "The second round of the tournament has concluded. The 3 victors are the Star Luo Empire, the Martial Soul Hall, and the All Heavens Shop. The third round will be the first, second, and third place matches. Wheel. There's no need for that. The Star Luo Empire's team has chosen to forfeit." Let's go straight to the championship match. However, before the MC could finish speaking, the White Tiger Emperor of the Star Luo Empire stood up from his chair. There was an element of luck involved in the drawing of the second round of the tournament. He was very familiar with the strength of the Seven Treasures Glazed sect, and knew that there was no way his team could win. As such, he chose to forfeit his match against the Martial Soul Hall and the All Heavens Shop. Damn! The match that I'm looking forward to the most is here before I can even react. Do you think the Martial Soul Hall or the All Heavens Shop will win? The All Heavens Shop is ridiculously strong, and even has a 100,000-year soul ring and a domain, but they're still too young. The Martial Soul Hall's 8 members must have the ability to fight above their level after being carefully nurtured by the Martial Soul Hall. In my opinion, the Martial Soul Hall has a better chance of winning. That's exactly what I think. I just don't know if the All Heavens Shop has any other trump cards up their sleeves. The White Tiger Great Emperor's words pushed the atmosphere to a new climax. In the spectator stands, the spectators all stood up and turned their attention to the 2 teams that were already standing on the stage. As long as we defeat the Martial Soul Hall, we'll be the champions of this year's tournament. On the stage, Ning Rongrong was so excited that she was in a daze. In the past, she would also see the first-ranked teams in her sect training for the top-ranked Soul Master tournament. At that time, she was secretly watching from the side, and her heart was filled with envy. She had also fantasized about when she could step onto the stage of the top-ranked Soul Master tournament, but she didn't expect that she would be standing on this stage before she was 6 years old. Furthermore, her own sect's team had already been eliminated, but she was still standing on this stage, and even wanted to become the champions. Dai Mubai subconsciously looked in the White Tiger Emperor's direction, and his eyes were filled with determination. You've really gone far in the All Heavens Shop. The White Tiger Emperor sighed when he met Dai Mubai's gaze. He could naturally tell what Dai Mubai meant. Dai Mubai's determined gaze was telling him that he didn't care about the throne anymore, and that his brother, Davis, should take it. Zhu Qing, I'll protect you well in the next battle. Dai Mubai's gaze shifted to Zhu Qing, and his eyes were filled with tenderness. No need. Zhu Qing didn't even look at Dai Mubai, and her voice was still cold. Last battle. Tang San's lips curled into a smile. After his gaze swept across the 7 people, he raised his right hand and placed it flat in the air. Dai Mubai, Oscar, Wang Fan, and the rest of the 7 looked at each other, and raised their hands as well. 8 small hands overlapped, and at the same time, they let out a deafening roar. Victory! Yes, they had to win this championship. They didn't just want to prove themselves, but also the All Heavens Shop, and their boss. Their boss was a god who defeated the sea god. As the representatives of their god, they couldn't allow themselves to fail. Little guys, victory and defeat on the battlefield isn't something you can talk about casually. The 8 people from the Martial Soul Hall suddenly heard Tang San's and the rest's roar, and one of them let out a sneer. On the rostrum, the Pope and the head consecrator are watching, and we bear the glory of the Martial Soul Hall. Even if our opponents are kids like you, we won't underestimate them. Not only do we have to win perfectly. The leader of the Martial Soul Hall team said. The All Heavens Shop will win. Tang San and the rest didn't pay any attention to the Martial Soul Hall team. After glancing at Chu Bei on the rostrum, they roared even louder and more resolutely. When the Soul Masters and the spectator stands heard the 6 words that reverberated in their ears, they couldn't help but feel their blood boil. No matter what, they didn't think that they would be ignited by a bunch of 6 or 7-year-old kids. Unknowingly, from the bottom of their hearts, they hoped that the All Heavens Shop would win this year's tournament. Boss Chu, these 8 little guys of yours are all very imposing. The Snow Knight Emperor of the Heaven Do Empire looked at Chu Bei and said. He was also infected by the little guys on the stage. Things like aura are all built on the foundation of strength. Chu Bei said with a calm and composed smile. I want to see how these 8 little guys are going to win. Bibi Dong said coldly. Ning Fingji looked at Ning Rongrong with gratification, and he couldn't help but feel grateful to Chu Bei. From the smile on Ning Rongrong's face, his spoiled daughter had really found a companion. In the All-Heaven shop, her companions wouldn't be like the disciples of the Seven Treasures glazed sect. They wouldn't distance themselves from her or flatter her because of her status. Maybe this is Rongrong's opportunity. Ning Fingji smiled knowingly. Chapter 234. Both sides, get ready. Let the match begin. As soon as the MC's voice fell, he quickly left the stage and handed over the battlefield to All Heaven's shop and Martial's Spirit Palace. After the MC left, All Heaven's shop and Martial's Spirit Palace looked at each other. Although either side spoke, the fierce collision of auras caused the smell of gunpowder to rise to the peak in an instant. At this moment, whether it was the 7 people on the rostrum, the other teams in the VIP seats, or the spectators in the stands, all of them cast their gazes onto the stage. Every single one of them stared unblinkingly at the two teams. After about 30 seconds of silence, Martial Spirit Palace's 8 members were the first to reveal their martial souls, and a surge of soul power erupted from their bodies. Just like the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, Martial Spirit Palace also had a support-type soul sage with a dazzling golden staff. Ning Rongrong and Oscar exchanged a glance and took the lead in buffing Tang San, Dai Mubai, and the others. The 8 of them hovered in the air. A huge shadow of a phoenix appeared behind Ma Hongjun. Dai Mubai was possessed by the evil-eyed white tiger. Zhu Zhuqing was possessed by the nether civet. Xiao Wu's hands turned into pure white rabbit claws with a cold gleam. Wang Fan was possessed by the golden horn beast. As for Tang San, he immediately activated his blue-silver domain to cover the entire stage. A domain is indeed a heaven-defying ability. Feeling the soul power within his body being suppressed, one of the members of Martial Spirit Palace revealed a surprised expression. I didn't expect the weakest martial soul of all, blue-silver grass, to be able to create a domain. The leader of Martial Spirit Palace looked at Tang San with a hint of jealousy in his calm voice. This isn't blue-silver grass, it's blue-silver emperor. The emperor of blue-silver grass. Tang San fiddled with the blue-silver grass in his palm. In an instant, countless strands of blue-silver grass grew on the stage. Just like in the battle against the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, these strands of blue-silver grass quickly grew to several meters long and danced in the air. A restrictive skill? Well, it's useless against us. The group from Martial Spirit Palace shot a disdainful glance at the strands of blue-silver grass wrapping around them. Their bodies trembled slightly as a black light penetrated their bodies. Under this black light, the strands of blue-silver grass were instantly shattered. By Ruah, support me! The leader of the Martial Soul Hall turned around and looked at the auxiliary-type Soul Master at the back. Receiving the order, the man named by Ruah's 7 soul rings flashed rhythmically. Then with a shake of the staff in his hand, a 7-colored ball of light wrapped around the 8 people in the team, including himself. In the next moment, the 8 members of the Martial Spirit Palace battle team flew into the sky like Tang San and the others. Not only do I have the 7 attribute buffs of your sausage, but I also have a higher percentage buff than you. Shooting a contemptuous glance at Oscar, Bai Ruah then points at the scepter in her hand. My 9 Saint Scepter is the king of all auxiliary martial spirits. I'll take care of those 2 support brats first. A soul sage from the Martial Soul Hall flew out. His martial soul was a blood-red curved blade that resembled a crescent moon. At that moment, he was holding a crescent blade in each of his hands. As he spoke, the crescent blades danced in his hands. With a swoosh, they flew straight towards Ning Rongrong and Oscar. It was the style of the Martial Spirit Palace battle team to take care of the weak support first. Tang San clearly saw through the man's intention. At the same time, he also flew out. With a wave of his hand, a shield made of intertwined blue-silver grass appeared in front of the man. Then I'll kill you first. A trace of coldness flashed in the man's eyes. The two crescent blades in his hand crossed and cut at the shield. Clang, an ear-piercing sound drifted through the air. The shield was pushed back by the power contained in the crescent blades, but there wasn't the slightest scratch on its surface. The man muttered to himself as he looked at the blue-silver grass shield tablet. His eyes were filled with astonishment. He hadn't expected the shield tablet to be so sturdy. Normally, his martial soul, Moonblade, could cut through iron like tofu, but it couldn't even leave a scratch on the blue-silver grass shield tablet. Blue-silver stab! Suddenly, Tang San's voice rang out. A bunch of blue-silver grass intertwined into a cone and stabbed towards the man from the side. The man didn't dodge. His fourth soul ring lit up, and a layer of pale golden light appeared on the surface of his body. With a crisp sound, the blue-silver stab bombarded the man's light armor, but it didn't have the slightest effect. My defense isn't something those guys from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect can compare to. Mere blue-silver grass won't be able to break through my defense. The man's face was full of disdain. Tang San ignored the man and stabbed out with the 8 spider spears on his back. However, with another crisp sound, the 8 spider spears struck the man's light armor from different directions. Although there were some cracks, they still didn't break it. Is this an external soul bone? You have a lot of treasures on you. The man's face turned serious. His fourth soul ring lit up again and repaired the cracks on the light armor. He sneered. Unfortunately, it's still not powerful enough. After 2 fruitless attacks, Tang San frowned. He raised his left hand, and a small pitch-black hammer with strange patterns appeared. Tang San's left hand surged with black light, and a small, unremarkable hammer appeared in his hands. Then, he condensed his soul power, and used his legs to carry his waist, his belt to carry his back, and his back to carry his arms. His entire body spun in the air, and with a whistling sound, he smashed towards the man wrapped in light armor. The man seemed to sense the danger. He glanced at the small hammer in Tang San's hand, and his pupils shrank. The next moment, the outer layer of the mech was thickened by another layer. Crack! Xiao Hei's hammer smashed into the man. With a crisp sound, a huge crack appeared on the man's light armor. This is impossible! The man looked at Xiao Hei's hammer in Tang San's hand in horror. He never thought that Xiao Hei's hammer would be able to break through his strengthened light armor. Not to mention a soul sage of the same level, even a soul Doloa who was a few levels higher than him would not be able to break through his light armor easily. Seeing Tang San raise Xiao Hei's hammer again, the man's figure flashed, and he immediately retreated. However, Tang San's second hammer seemed to be closely linked to the first hammer. The man retreated less than half a meter, and Xiao Hei's hammer followed him like a shadow. Demon-breaking Moonblade! Seeing Xiao Hei's hammer approaching again, the man's second soul ring lit up. He simply stopped defending and went up with the red Moonblade in his hand. Dang dang dang! In a few breaths, Xiao Hei's hammer in Tang San's hand and the Moonblade in the man's hand had clashed for more than 10 rounds. The violent collisions sounded like raindrops hitting banana leaves. Tang San can actually fight Master Sima with his own strength, and he's not at a disadvantage. Where did he get the hammer in his hand? I don't see any soul tools on him. Didn't you guys realize that there's a pattern to the way he swings his hammer? It feels like he's swinging it one after another. It doesn't seem like he's swinging it randomly. This Tang San is truly shocking. I wonder what other trump cards he has. In the VIP seats, the disciples from the Martial Soul Hall were stunned. As they watched Tang San and Sima fight, their hearts were trembling. On the battlefield, the man called Sima and Tang San became more and more fearful as they fought. Every time Tang San swung Xiao Hei's hammer, the strength contained in it would increase by a little. In the beginning, he could still easily block Xiao Hei's hammer. However, it became more and more difficult for him. Right now, he was almost being suppressed. He tried to slow down, but he realized that he couldn't do so. The hammer in his opponent's hand seemed to have a special stickiness that was pulling at his body. He was one of the strongest existences in the Martial Soul Hall below the Soul Doloa level. He had his pride. He couldn't ask for help from his companions when he was fighting a 6-year-old kid. He could only grit his teeth and continue to resist his opponent's attacks. He was praying that his opponent's hammering would end soon. Of course, he was also very regretful. He shouldn't have been the first to make a move. That hammer isn't a weapon that he carries with him. It's his martial soul. That martial soul is the clear sky hammer. In the VIP seats, someone recognized the Xiao Hei's hammer in Tang San's hand. He couldn't help but exclaim, "It seems like it's really the clear sky hammer." After the first person exclaimed, the rest reacted one after another. They were all stunned. Everyone was shocked. They couldn't connect Tang San with the sect that had been hiding for many years. The clear sky hammer was a martial soul that had created countless glory in the world of soul masters. It possessed the strongest strength and attack. It was at the top of the pyramid among tool souls. It represented the strongest sect among the 3 upper sections. It represented the sect that had a peak Doluo. Isn't his martial soul blue-silver grass? No, it should be the blue-silver emperor with the blue-silver domain. How did it become the clear sky hammer? Don't tell me he has twin martial souls. As they thought until here, everyone in the VIP seats was even more shocked. Don't tell me this fellow is using the chaotic splitting wind hammer technique? Not only is he from the All Heaven shop, but he's also a direct disciple of the Clear Sky sect. Ning Fingji locked his gaze on Tang San. He seemed to have realized something. Chu Bei looked at Ning Fingji and smiled faintly. Tang San was using the Clear Sky sect's unique soul skill, the chaotic splitting wind hammer technique. When the chaotic splitting wind hammer technique was cultivated to the extreme, one could continuously swing 81 hammers. The strength of each hammer would be stronger than the previous one. If one could swing 81 hammers, no one below the godly realm would be a match for him. Of course, not all disciples of the Clear Sky sect could cultivate the chaotic splitting wind hammer technique. More accurately speaking, there were very few people who could cultivate it. This was because only the direct disciples of the sect leader were qualified to cultivate it. This chaotic splitting wind hammer technique was naturally not taught by Chu Bei. He only gave some pointers, and Tang San was able to comprehend it. He connected the hammer technique that he had been forging for many years with the Clear Sky hammer. Chapter 235. Rumble. The sounds of intense collisions continued in the air above the stage. It had to be said that Sima had enough fighting talent. Even though he was at a disadvantage, he was still able to withstand Tang San's 60 hammer strikes while switching between 7 soul skills. Hammer strike! Suddenly, Tang San shouted, and 7 soul rings lit up on his body. The moment Tang San shouted, everyone in the spectator stands and VIP stands stood up straight. Their eyes were wide open and their expressions were numb. Another 700,000-year soul rings! Monster, a real monster! One person has 1,400,000-year soul rings. My God! What did Boss Chu do to him? If he can take me as his disciple, I'm willing to shorten my life by 10 years. The spectators were in a daze. They had no words to describe the shock in their hearts. They saw too much inconceivable from the group of little fellows on the fighting stage. They had seen too many impossible things. Sima, retreat! Not far away, the leader of the martial spirit palace exclaimed. At the same time, his figure flashed across the void. The man called Sima could not help but reveal a look of helplessness when he heard the voice. He looked at the hammer in Tang San's hand that was releasing a frightening black light. Its size had suddenly expanded by several times, and he could feel the terrifying energy contained within it. However, his opponent's strange hammer technique had an inexplicable stickiness to it. He wanted to escape, but his strength did not allow him to. Rumble! Following a deafening boom, the Clear Sky hammer landed steadily on Sima's body. First, it shattered the light armor on the surface of his body, then it landed on his chest. At this moment, the leader of the martial soul hall arrived. However, he was unable to stop the clear sky hammer in time. He could only catch Sima, who had been shot into the distance like a cannonball. Poochie! In Lehai's arms, Sima spat out mouthfuls of blood. His cheeks were pale and his aura was extremely weak. This was especially true for his chest, where Tang San's hammer had struck. His clothes were deeply dented into his flesh and blood. It was a mess, and one could faintly see some of his internal organs. He looked extremely miserable. Tang San from the All Heavens shop has the upper hand. Was that hammer strike 100,000-year soul ring soul skill? What a fierce aura! As for the champion of this competition, I'm already starting to waver. Looking at the unstoppable momentum of the All Heavens shop, they might really be able to defeat the Martial Spirit Palace team. I don't know if they can win, but what is certain is that after this battle, the battle of this army of children will become the talk of the entire continent. Looking at Sima, who was coughing up blood, the spectators were stunned at first. When they came to their senses, they burst into an uproar. Damn you! As the leader of the Martial Soul Hall team, Lehai glared at Tang San with a murderous look in his eyes. However, he didn't rush to attack. Instead, he carried Sima and flew towards the auxiliary-type soul master named Xiao Tong. The staff in Xiao Tong's hand lit up with a blue halo of light and stuck to Sima's chest. How is he? Lehai looked at Xiao Tong anxiously. His injuries are very serious. I'm afraid he won't be able to continue fighting for a while, Xiao Tong said with a frown. It's fine as long as it's not fatal. Lehai let out a long breath and looked back at Tang San. He said coldly, I alone am enough to deal with this bunch of kids. I didn't expect it to consume so much soul power. Tang San played with the clear sky hammer in his hand. The last hammer strike had used up almost a tenth of his soul power. Fortunately, he was very satisfied with the results. One hammer strike had severely injured a rank 80 soul sage from the Martial Soul Hall. Now that the All Heaven shop was famous on the continent, and his boss was a true god who had defeated the sea god, there was no need for him to hide the fact that he had twin martial souls. Good fellow. On the main stage, the White Tiger Emperor stood up and clapped his hands. He didn't expect this kid to have another identity. He was a direct descendant of the Clear Sky sect. Both the Snowy Night Emperor and Ning Fingji were shocked as well. Twin martial souls. One is the Clear Sky Hammer, the other is the Blue Silver Emperor. Qian Daoliu's cold gaze was fixed on Tang San as he muttered to himself. His eyes gradually turned blood red, and a violent aura erupted from his body. Amidst the endless murderous intent, the marble tiles under his feet were covered in cracks like a spider web. What's wrong with you, Head Reverend? The White Tiger Emperor, the Snowy Night Emperor, Ning Fingji, and Yu Tianhao all looked at Qian Daolu in shock as they felt the terrifying soul power undulations from Qian Daolia's body. They were all confused. They didn't understand why Qian Daolu, who didn't leave the Dolua Palace and never asked about the Martial Soul Hall, would suddenly release such a terrifying killing intent. He's Tang Hao's son. Qian Daolu shifted his gaze from Tang San to Chu Bei. There was a questioning look in his eyes, and his cold voice was filled with monstrous hatred. So what if he is? He's still my proxy. Chu Bei turned his body and calmly looked at Qian Daolu, whose eyes were bloodshot and veins were popping out on his forehead. There was a faint smile on his face. He must die. Qian Daolu spat out the 4 syllables one by one. Are you treating me as if I don't exist? Chu Bei's tone was calm, and he looked as if he was casually chatting with someone. After hearing Chu Bei and Qian Daoliu's conversation, the White Tiger Emperor, the Snowy Night Emperor, Ning Fingji, and Yu Tianhao's expressions changed. Their hearts were in turmoil. At this moment, they were no longer calm, and their emotions were pushed to a new height. All of a sudden, the 4 of them looked at each other, and no one said anything. In the end, they all gulped as they digested the information they had just heard. Boss Chu's proxy, Tang San, was actually the son of one of the two heroes of the Clear Sky sect, the Clear Sky Dalul, Tang Hao. With their status, they naturally knew what had happened back then. Qian Daoliu's son, Qian Xuanji, was the previous Martial Soul Hall's pope. Qian Xuanji had set his sights on the Blue-Silver Emperor, which was Tang San's mother, Tang Hao's wife, Ayan, in order to obtain a 100,000-year soul ring. In that battle, Ayan sacrificed herself to Tang Hao in order to protect Tang Hao and the newborn Tang San. In that battle, Tang Hao was furious. In his hatred, he used the 100,000-year soul ring that Ayan sacrificed to kill two titled Dolua and severely injured Qian Xuanji, causing him to die. It could be said that even though Qian Daolu and Tang San had never met before, the two of them had an irreconcilable feud. One of them hated Tang Hao for killing his mother, while the other hated Tang Hao for stealing his son. "Are you trying to stop me?" Qian Daolu glared at Chu Bei. Following a cold snort, the space around him started to distort, and crackling sounds could be heard. "No." Chu Bei shook his head. Then, he retracted his smile, and his gaze turned serious. "If you dare to make a move, I'll kill you." After he said that, a layer of faint purple light appeared on the surface of Chu Bei's body. In an instant, ripples appeared in the space around him. Wherever the ripples passed, the space around him suddenly froze. A domineering aura started to spread. Even the Snowy Night Emperor and the White Tiger Emperor, who had been sitting on the dragon's throne for a long time, couldn't help but be stunned by this aura. This strange aura didn't have any elemental energy fluctuations, but it contained a strange pressure that shook one's heart. It was the aura of a king who had been in a high position for a long time. "Do you want to try?" After he said that, 9 soul rings lit up on Qian Daoliu's body. 3 pairs of 6 golden wings appeared behind his back. At the same time, his soul power rose to an unparalleled level. Terrifying waves of soul power surged down like a torrential river, surging towards Chu Bei. Chu Bei smiled. Facing Qian Daoliu's immense soul power, he didn't seem to be afraid at all. He tidied his clothes, and purple light started to spread from his body. Similarly, a terrifying aura was released from his body. 2 extremely tyrannical auras instantly intertwined in the air. In an instant, the air on the main stage froze. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion in the air. It was much louder than the one from Tang San and Sima's fight. In the next moment, the huge main stage exploded. Only the area surrounded by the 7 chairs was left intact. As for the other areas, they were all blown into pieces and shot into the sky. The loud explosion from the main stage attracted the attention of everyone in the spectators' stand and the VIP seats. Everyone shifted their gaze away from the stage and looked at the destroyed stage in confusion. What happened over there? What's going on? The people sitting on the rostrum are the 7 most influential people in the continent. Where did this explosion come from? Could it be that some lunatic wants to attack those 7 important people? I can't tell. Maybe they're the only ones who know what happened. Everyone started to discuss. Countless gazes switched between Chu Bei, Ningfingji, and the other 6 people. All sorts of guesses were made. Your Majesty, are you all right? Back down. This has nothing to do with you. Don't come over. Before the Heaven Do Empire's guards could get close to the main stage, the Snowy Night Emperor shouted. His majestic voice reverberated in their ears. After chasing away the guards, the Snowy Night Emperor glanced at the shattered marble around him. He couldn't help but draw a cold breath. The White Tiger Emperor, Ningfingji, and Yu Tianhao's expressions changed drastically. Just the clash between Chu Bei and Qian Daoliu's auras was enough to create such a terrifying impact. Crack! However, just when they thought that the two of them were evenly matched in the previous probing exchange, the exquisite dragon-patterned chair that Thousand Dao Lu was sitting on shattered with a loud bang, turning into a pile of wood shavings. When they looked at Chu Bei again, they saw that he was still as calm as ever. He was even casually crossing his legs. Finally, a hint of surprise appeared on Bibi Dong's face. His furrowed brows showed that he wasn't calm at all. Bibi Dong, you stay here. I'm going back to the Doluo Palace. Qian Daolu brushed the wood shavings off his butt and straightened his back. After glancing at Bibi Dong, he snorted coldly at Chu Bei. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared from the main stage in a streak of light. Eh? Why did the Doluo Palace's grand consecrators suddenly leave? This battle isn't over yet. When everyone saw Qian Daolu leave, they couldn't help but be puzzled. The Snowy Night Emperor, the White Tiger Emperor, Ningfingji, and Yu Tianhao's gazes landed on the pile of wood shavings. When they looked at Chu Bei again, their eyes were filled with shock and respect. Of course, there was also a hint of curiosity. They couldn't believe that Qian Daolu, who had stood at the pinnacle of the Doluo continent for hundreds of years, had lost in a clash of auras. Chu Bei didn't say anything about Qian Daolu's departure. If he guessed correctly, Qian Daolu must have gone back to do something. If not for the fact that he didn't want to interrupt the battle on the stage, he might have left Qian Daolu behind. However, even if Qian Daolu returned to the Doluo Palace, he wasn't worried at all. After all, he wasn't far from unlocking rank 11 merchandise. When that time came, no matter how fancy it would be nothing but a joke in front of him. Because of the sudden change on the rostrum, the Martial Spirit Palace and All Heaven's shop teams on the battle stage also stopped fighting. Curious and puzzled gazes fell on Chu Bei, Bibi Dong, and the others. The battle isn't over yet. Let's continue. Bibi Dong stood up and walked to the edge of the main stage. His majestic voice reverberated in the air above the plaza. Hearing this, the Martial Spirit Hall and All Heaven's shop teams were startled. Twin martial souls! I didn't expect you to be related to the Clear Sky sect. Li Hai flew towards Tang San unhurriedly. I don't know what relationship I have with the Clear Sky sect. However, my martial soul is called Clear Sky. Tang San looked at Li Hai calmly, and waved the Clear Sky hammer in his hand. I have to admit that your talent is far superior to mine. However, you hurt Sima. Even if you're a child, I won't hold back. Li Hai's voice became colder and colder. The closer he got to Tang San, the stronger his soul power became. When he was less than 10 meters away from Tang San, a blue blade with dragon patterns engraved on it appeared in his hand. Is this your martial soul? Looking at the blue blade in his opponent's hand, Tang San frowned slightly. Blades of Azura. Li Hai didn't answer Tang San's question. The moment his fifth soul ring lit up, he appeared in front of Tang San. Almost at the same time, the blue blade in his hand blossomed with a brilliant light. A sharp blade aura shot out, and the cold blade slashed towards Tang San quickly and accurately. Tang San's pupils shrank. Li Hai was too fast. He was so fast that he couldn't be considered a soul sage. Tang San didn't hesitate. He immediately formed a blue-silver grass shield in front of him. Clang! The blue blade in Li Hai's hand slammed into the shield. Unlike Sima's attack, Li Hai's attack sent the shield flying. It slammed into Tang San's body. Tang San was instantly pushed back by this force. Little San, third brother! Dan Mubai, Xiao Wu, and the rest couldn't help but exclaim when they saw that Tang San was about to fly out of the stage and crash to the ground. Chapter 236. Oscar, Ningrongrong, and the rest were anxious as they watched Tang San fly out. They knew that Tang San wasn't injured, but according to the tournament's rules, once he fell out of the arena, he would lose his chance to return. On the other hand, Li Hai narrowed his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smug smile. However, before he could smile, the blue-silver grass shield tablet in front of Tang San shone with bluish-green light. Blue-silver sea! Just as Tang San was about to fly out of the fighting stage, he let out a loud cry. In the next instant, the vine-like blue-silver grass on the arena seemed to have received an order from an emperor. Countless vines intertwined and grew crazily, entangling together like waves, quickly forming a net. After catching Tang San, he threw him back to the center of the arena. What a troublesome brat! Li Hai frowned as he looked at Tang San, who was standing not far away from him. I underestimated you. Tang San looked at Li Hai again. Although they were both rank 80, they couldn't rely on the All Heavens Mall to increase their cultivations after reaching rank 80 because of the upper limit. Because of this, they were equivalent to early-stage rank 80 soul masters in terms of soul power. On the other hand, the people from the martial soul hall had stabilized, especially Li Hai. If he was given a soul ring, he could become a soul Dolua at rank 83 or even rank 84. Kid, you're really arrogant. Li Hai snorted. Now it's my turn. Tang San locked his gaze on Li Hai. He held his clear sky hammers with both hands and condensed his soul power. Just like when he fought Sima, he used the disorder-splitting wind hammer technique. Clang, clang, clang. The clear sky hammers struck Li Hai's body again and again. In a few breaths, he struck 73 times. This was the maximum number of strikes that Tang San could use with his current soul power. However, Li Hai's aura was still stable even after Tang San's 73 strikes. Looking at the other party's calm and collected manner, it seemed that he was still waiting for Tang San's 74th hammer strike. Is that it? If you can swing your hammers 2 more times, I'm afraid I'll be in the same state as Sima. Li Hai looked at Tang San expressionlessly. However, your hammer technique is quite impressive. I'm sure only the direct disciples of the Clear Sky sect can practice it. No wonder Sima couldn't get rid of him. It's settled. Looking at the calm and composed Li Hai, Tang San took a deep breath and shouted again. The moment his red soul ring flickered, the clear sky hammer in his hand rapidly expanded. The black light released a frightening aura, and he viciously smashed it towards Li Hai. Let me see how powerful this move of yours is. Kai's expression didn't change as he watched the clear sky hammer come closer and closer. His 5th soul ring lit up again. Blades of Azura. In an instant, the blue saber and clear sky hammer collided together. Blue and black intertwined. Clang! Amidst the deafening sound of metal colliding, although Tang San did not fly back as far as before, he still staggered back 10 meters. Even though the heaven-shaking hammer had neutralized 90% of the blue blade's soul force, it was that layer of soul force that had struck his body that had caused his chest's blood to roil and his arms to ache. On the other hand, his opponent, Li Hai, did not move at all. Only a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. Was that the 100,000-year soul skill of your clear sky hammer? As expected of the strongest attack-type tool soul, Sima's defeat was not unjustified. The killing intent in Li Hai's eyes did not diminish, but it did not affect his praise. Just as I thought, although Tang San is ridiculously strong and even defeated Lord Sima, he is still not Lord Li Hai's match. As far as I know, the reason Lord Li Hai is still at rank 80 is because he has been searching for a 100,000-year soul beast to obtain a 100,000-year soul ring. In the VIP seats, the martial spirit hall disciples looked at Li Hai with eyes full of admiration. Hi, that kid's defense is a little strong. Since we can't hurt him, let's start with his teammates. A red-clothed man flew to Li Hai's side. His martial soul was a scythe with chains. Our thoughts are the same as Zhou Feng's. Let's get rid of the others first. After a while, the 6 main attackers of the martial spirit hall team, aside from the heavily injured Sima and the auxiliary soul master, stood side by side. Then I'll listen to you. Li Hai did not stubbornly insist. His gaze moved from Tang San to Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and the others. Stay alert and get into a formation. Following Tang San's words, the 8 figures of the All Heavens shop flashed at the same time. In an instant, the 8 of them formed an orderly formation. There were 4 rows in the formation, 2, 3, 2, and 1. Tang San and Wang Fan were in the front row, Ma Hongjun, Xiao Wu, and Zhu Zhuqing were in the second row, Oscar and Ning Rongrong were in the third row, and Dai Mubai was in the last row. What an interesting little guy. Looking at the formation Tang San and the others had formed, the 6 members of the martial spirit hall let out a sneer. Then, their soul rings flickered. Lehigh was still holding the blue scythe in his hand, and the blade was releasing a sharp chill. Joe Fong was holding one end of the chain, and the sharp scythe was twirling and dancing. As for the other 4 people, one of them was holding a 6-meter-long halberd, one of them was holding a pink folding fan that was releasing specks of light, one of them was holding an iron rod that was engraved with patterns, and the last one was holding a long spear. Amidst the sound of breaking air, the 6 figures of the martial spirit hall rushed towards Tang San and the others with terrifying soul power. Tang San, we can finally see the power of this thing you prepared. Wang Fan was full of anticipation. I won't disappoint you. Tang San's lips curled into a smile. Then, he coldly glanced at the 6 members of the martial spirit hall, and in the next moment, he took the lead and went up to the martial spirit hall team. The 8 little guys from the All Heavens shop actually took the initiative to go up to them. In the spectators' stand, the crowd of spectators revealed astonished expressions. They nervously rubbed their hands, as if they were worried for Tang San and the others. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, a wave of strange buzzing sounds came from the arena. Then, under everyone's gaze, the 8 little guys from the All Heavens shop took out a ball-shaped object at the same time. Now's the time! As Tang San's voice fell, the 8 people from the All Heavens shop waved the ball-shaped object in their right hands. Their forearms trembled in a strange rhythm, and the 8 of them moved in exactly the same way. The moment they opened their 5 fingers, their fingers seemed to disappear into thin air. At the same time, the ball-shaped object in their hands flew towards the 6 people from the martial spirit hall. What's this little metal ball? It doesn't have any soul power. You can't be thinking of using it to hurt us, right? One of the soul sages from the martial spirit hall laughed coldly. But before his mocking voice could spread, his eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Whoosh, 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 the metal ball that Tang San and the others threw out suddenly stopped moving forward. Instead, it started to spin violently. As it spun, the holes on the metal ball shot out dark yellow needles one after another. These needles seemed to have a mind of their own. Every single one of them shot out in a curve towards one of the people from the martial spirit hall. Be careful, don't be careless! Lehigh shouted. He was the first to light up his defensive soul ring. At the same time, he swung his blue blade at the incoming needles. The other 5 people didn't hesitate and followed suit. Dang, dang, dang! Amidst the continuous buzzing sound of metal, the needles bombarded the 6 people from the martial spirit hall. At first, Lehigh, Zhou Feng, and the others didn't think there was anything special about these needles. But as time passed, they quickly discovered something strange. These countless needles had a specific trajectory. No matter how they struck, they would always shoot towards someone in a curve in the air. Heavens, what did the martial spirit hall encounter? The spectators in the stands stared at the stage in disbelief. In their eyes, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall were in a ball-shaped space filled with needles. In this small space, densely packed needles repeatedly shot towards them. No matter how they slashed, the number of needles did not decrease. Even if he swept away the needles around him, the needles that were swept away would borrow the force of his sweep to attack Xiangling. On the rostrum, Chu Bei looked at Tang San and the other's masterpiece with a gratified smile. The Tang Sex No. 10 hidden weapon technique, Bat Wing Samsara, coupled with the No. 9 hidden weapon, Dragon Beard Needles, was not something the martial spirit hall could easily break free from. Chi chi chi! In the air above the stage, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall were attacked by the needles from all directions. At first, the 6 of them relied on their mechs to defend themselves. But as time passed, more and more soul power was consumed in their bodies. On the other hand, the energy in the needles didn't decrease, but increased. Under this situation, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall looked worse and worse. Their frowns deepened. They tried to break free from the needles, but the needles seemed to occupy a strange position and followed them like shadows. Wherever the 6 of them moved, the needles followed. Crack! Finally, with a crisp sound, a crack appeared on the neck of the man with the rod. In an instant, the densely packed needles seemed to have found a vent as they crazily surged into the tiny crack. In the next moment, the man with the rod had a twisted expression. His body was covered in blood, and he screamed in pain. The other 5 people didn't have time to care about the injuries of the man with the rod. A series of cracking sounds could be heard, and cracks appeared on their mechs. In an instant, heart-wrenching screams could be heard from above the stage. It was heart-wrenching. When the ear-piercing screams disappeared, the audience in the stands stared blankly at the stage. They couldn't regain their senses for a long time. At this moment, the 6 people from the Martial Spirit Hall were curled up in pain on the stage. Their bodies were covered in small holes. Flesh and blood flowed out of these holes like a small, bright red flower blooming. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.